What are the best-kept secrets that flight crews hide from us? As an air traffic controller, we're constantly swearing and yelling at pilots when we're not on the frequency, and when we get on the mic, we use our nice guy voices. One of my all-time favorites is the captain accidentally broadcasting his passenger briefing, welcome aboard, weather in Chicago, and so on and so forth, on the frequency instead of aircraft PA system. He blocked up the ground, ramp, tower radios, all of those for a solid 15 seconds. You automatically become the laughingstock of the airport when that happens. I was learning to be cabin crew at college, and in the event that someone dies on board, the cabin crew make it less obvious that they've passed. They put glasses on them, maybe a hat. Essentially, they dress them up as subtly as possible to not alert or panic the other passengers. Please don't disturb my friend, he's dead tired. I was only a month or two out of my IOE, or initial operating experience, at my first airline job, flying right seat in a regional jet. I'd just come back from the bathroom when the captain pointed out that several flight instruments on his side had failed, and he had reverted to using data from my side. He basically programmed his main flight display to start using data from the second independent system. Soon, however, that went bad as well. The autopilot disconnected, and here we are at 25,000 feet or so, in icing, hand flying off a tiny little combined last-ditch backup instrument called an IESI, an integrated electronic standby instrument if memory serves. We declared an emergency, asked air traffic control to point us in the direction of better weather, and tried to figure out what the heck was happening. Icing on both primary pitot tubes, maybe? Though that shouldn't happen because they're heated. In any case, we ended up making a perfectly safe landing after a diversion, and the passengers never had any idea that for a few minutes I was really concerned that things were about to turn very, very bad, and that we were down to our emergency backup gauge. That's the shortened version without most of the techno-babble anyway. Ooh, I've got an original one for you. There's this radio frequency we're all required to monitor. It's called GUARD. It's for emergency use, and it's designed for maydays and for air traffic control to reach aircraft that might have lost radio contact, or to relay messages from aircraft to other aircraft, stuff like that. Every day, this frequency is misused. You'll hear hundreds of professional aviators meowing, yelling obscenities at each other, making fun of one airline or the other. Often what sets it off is some poor guy accidentally transmitting his PA announcement to passengers to the GUARD frequency instead, followed by the very mature outbreaks for about 5 to 10 minutes. It is the worst on the East Coast. Just today I heard an airline aircraft trying to relay info about a medical emergency on that frequency through one of their fellow company aircraft. They couldn't finish any of their sentences without people yelling, "You're on guard! Meow! Nobody cares about you, passenger. Hey, you're on guard too, huh?" Oh wow, good to know that the people in charge of piloting these vessels and their hundreds of passengers are essentially behaving like kids on a World of Warcraft server when they're meant to be focusing on their instruments. The scariest moment of my day is when the flight attendant opens the internal bag door, which is the closet we all throw our overnight bags in, without calling us in the flight deck first. There's an alarm and master caution which gets me every time. Pilots here, we only get paid when the doors are closed and the pushback has commenced. If we're delayed or sitting with the door open, we're just as annoyed as you are. At altitude, we're constantly in contact with air traffic control and change to different center frequencies or control for other than US locations. We're also doing fuel checks to make sure the fuel burn isn't abnormal, dodging weather, and probably complaining about scheduling. Pilots are on their phones or reading the newspaper all the time. Ex-airline employee here, often we'd have someone on board with terrible body odor. You can set the temperature on one end of the cabin hotter, and it localized the smell to one part of the plane. If you see coffee filter bags hanging everywhere, it's because someone smells like an open butt somewhere on the plane. Flight attendants often talk about the hot guy in 23B or whatever seat the hot guy's in, and pilots screw around a lot in the cockpit. They'll take pictures, post on Facebook, watch movies. Automation has taken over a lot of the work on their long flights. I'm not an airline pilot yet, I just got hired by my first airline and I start class next month. But I've been a pilot for 6 years. I primarily teach Chinese airplane pilots how to fly, but I've done some passenger operations in business aircraft on the side. First of all the comments about pilots making cat sounds and Chewbacca noises on the GUARD frequency are 100% true. Also, when someone leaves an area and switches frequencies, they'll yell, "See ya!" and a dozen other pilots will key up yelling, "See ya!" one after the other. We also enjoy talking crap about people who say, "with you," "got 'em on the fish finder," or "any traffic please advise," and "tree" and "fife." Also, the things that scare passengers don't faze the pilots one bit. We don't give a crap about turbulence or having to do a go-around. The things I don't like are things you generally won't know about. Thunderstorm dodging, microburst alerts, ice, maintenance issues, stuff like that. I'm also a pilot. Sometimes the passengers can be having a nice, quiet flight in the back while the pilots are up front dodging thunderstorms and yelling their heads off. We'll not only transport dead bodies, but also live transplants like hearts and lungs. I particularly like the live transplants because we get to cut to the front of the line for takeoff, and we get all the shortcuts to our destination. And a tip for those who get motion sickness, try not to move your heads around. Pilots move their eyes instead of their heads to look at the instruments on the flight deck. Also try to sit in a seat over the wing. This area of the plane doesn't rotate as much during climbs and descents. Sure, flight attendants can't do pilots' jobs, but pilots can't do flight attendants' jobs either. We aren't hired for our people skills. And don't take off your shoes to go to the bathroom. People pee on the floor all the time. My story started off with us blissfully unaware and ended with mild pant soiling. I was flying to France in one of those planes with the TV screens up front to show the flight path and where you currently are. I was just about to fall asleep when the captain asked over the PA if there was a doctor on board and if they could go to a specific seat number. I knew this was bad. The flight path changed to Canada and we had to make an emergency landing. We were stuck there for 2 hours. When we finally got to France, his entire row was quarantined off. I have no idea what the frick happened. Pilot is sleeping and co-pilot is flying and there are dead bodies in the cargo. The source? My mum, who is a former flight attendant. Please don't fly with an ear infection or fluid in your ears. There's a chance you can rupture your eardrum. Flight crews are especially susceptible to this since we're constantly going through pressurization or depressurization when we work. As a pilot, I can tell you that most of the time, the passengers aren't given the full answer as to why a flight's delayed or cancelled. Airlines will typically blame cancellations on unrelated events like weather instead of mechanical issues so they don't have to pay for hotel rooms or meals. Also, chemtrails aren't real. For those of you who believe they are, give your head a shake. My uncle is a pilot. He says that most people don't understand how much of the airplane is run by computers. The pilots are necessary, but a lot of the elements of flying are automated nowadays. There's a joke about the Airbus A380 that goes, "The A380 comes with a pilot and a dog. The pilot is there to feed the dog, and the dog is there to bark at the pilot if he tries to touch anything." I worked with a pilot that was really old. He couldn't stay awake in flight. The first officer kept having to poke him and wake him up. We kept feeding him black coffee, but it didn't help so much. I asked him if he was retiring soon, but he said he couldn't afford it because our airline has no pension program and the pay scale is pathetic. It was pretty scary. There's a special frequency called guard that all aircraft are supposed to monitor. It's for emergencies or for when an aircraft ends up on the wrong frequency and the controllers need to get in contact with them to change to the right frequency. It is full of pilots meowing at each other and people accidentally asking for gate assignments and making other radio calls. See, there's that specific thing of pilots meowing on the guard frequency again. We have verification from 3 sources that this specific thing is happening. And although I can put the teenage boy behavior down to just that's how us men behave in general, I don't really understand the feline calls. Now, here's one of our commenters who seems determined to list everything that can or has ever happened on an airplane. Prisoners are transported on commercial airline flights sometimes, and law enforcement officers are escorting them. On days with low ceilings or visibility and overall crappy weather, we may be within minutes of making the decision to divert due to fuel, especially if we end up having to hold. This isn't to say we don't have enough fuel. Legally, we must have enough fuel on board to shoot an approach to our destination, go around, fly and land at an alternate airport if we have one, and even then still have 45 minutes of fuel remaining on board. Armed law enforcement officers on board sometimes not escorting anyone. Flying faster to get there earlier if a crew member has a commute to catch home. Chatting or joking with air traffic control if the frequency isn't busy. Delta pilots reporting light chop. Pilots making PA announcements over frequency rather than PA. And yes, the meowing on guard as well as other nonsense. Asking air traffic control how the rides are only to be told they suck at all altitudes. We try to get away from the turbulence, but it's not always possible, and we can't predict it and can't see it. We can only make educated guesses as to where it may be. It's hot back there, during the summer mostly, and we know it. We have it blowing as hard as it can and cold as it can. We're sorry if the plane still ends up feeling like baby's breath. Meanwhile, our air vents are keeping us cool if we're lucky. The iPad that you might see us using in the cockpit has all of our manuals, approach plates, maps, and checklists. Basically almost everything we need. It's really incredible. I just hope they both don't decide to brick themselves at the same time in the air. No, there isn't a single cloud in the sky where we are now. Meanwhile, our destination is encompassed by a massive thunderstorm. We don't like being late either, but we're paid to deliver living passengers. And we can't collect that paycheck if we're also dead. There's a chance your flight could be a pilot's very first flight in an actual jet. He could be fresh out of training, out of the simulator, and actually flying that jet aircraft. Scary, right? Well, that pilot could probably explain every single system of that aircraft in depth. Guys that have been flying the line for years? Maybe not quite as in depth. Oh, and that brand new jet pilot is flying with a Czech airman, who's there to further teach that new pilot about flying on the line. The air pilot can fly for a majority of the flight. We have to at least take off and land. Autoland isn't used for everyday normal operations. Different airlines have different rules on autopilot use. We must have the autopilot on above FL 200, which is 20,000 feet, unless it's inoperable. So we can hand fly up at that altitude, and sometimes we do. If we never go above that altitude, we can hand fly the entire flight, never turning the autopilot on, which we also sometimes do, and it's often encouraged to maintain piloting skills. You could be asleep in the back while the pilots are battling caution messages about some system that decided to throw a hissy fit. Planes often have broken equipment on board. It's just the nature of the business, and things just break. We can't always fix it, so there's an approved list of things that might be broken and how long they may be broken before they must be fixed. It could be something that doesn't affect us much, like brake temperature sensor that isn't working, or it could be something that requires the crew to account for it, like a thrust reverser being inoperative or navigation GPS inoperable. Not stuff that makes the flight unsafe, just maybe more work for the pilots. Also, the captain can always reject an aircraft if he feels it's unsafe. If you ask us not to turn on the chemtrails this flight, we are legally obligated to comply. Yes, that's a joke, no one's asked, but if you do, I bet the pilots would get a kick out of it. Also, they're called contrails. We're not customer service, we don't know where your flight is leaving out of or how to help your problem. We'll try to help, but we'll usually try to direct you to a gate agent or actual customer service who can help you. We're not trying to be rude, we just really can't help you. Another person may be sitting up front with the pilots in what's called the jump seat. It could be a pilot commuting to or from work, a Czech airman observing, or an FAA jump seater observing to make sure we're following regulations. Pilots and their families get flight benefits, same for flight attendants, and we can fly for free or discounted. We get on a standby list, and only after all paying passengers are on board, standby passengers may be boarded. It's hours of boredom interrupted by moments of sheer terror on every flight. When a fatal aircraft accident happens, all pilots mourn. Pilots are a pretty close-knit group. We might hate each other's guts at times, but we never wish each other the worst. The view from the cockpit is amazing. Sunsets, sunrises, lightning storms at night, flying over mountains and landscapes, it all never gets old. The captain and first officer are both fully capable of flying the aircraft. Each pilot is designated a role, either pilot flying or pilot monitoring. The pilot flying is the one actually flying, and the monitoring is monitoring what the pilot flying is doing to back him or her up. Usually, crews switch roles every flight, every 2 flights. So the captain is pilot flying for the first 2 flights, and then the flight officer is pilot flying for the next 2 flights. Yes, the flight officer or co-pilot actually does fly the plane just as much. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A former teacher told us a story that fits this question. Every year he'd make trips to Europe that were for an educational experience, or related to the subject he taught in one way or another. In reality, it was just an amazing way to spend 2 weeks in Europe. One year he took a student's brother with him, since he needed an extra person to have the minimum amount of required students. After the 10-hour flight, the flight attendant walked up to him and asked if said brother was a part of his group. He says yes. Apparently on the flight, this kid stopped the flight attendant and asked her to do the deed with him in the bathroom. She denied, but he continued to ask her several more times throughout the flight. It reached a point where she no longer felt anywhere near comfortable. She asked my teacher if she could notify the authorities and have him sent back to the States. He agreed. There were no immediate flights back home, so a distant relative of his had to be contacted. He stayed with the relative he had never even met for an entire weekend. He was then put on a flight back home the following week. In short, kid repeatedly asks flight attendant to do the deed with him during a 10-hour flight, she contacts authorities and he gets sent back. Honestly, win for you. He helped you get the numbers up to embark on your trip to begin with, then got kicked off for his awful behavior, hopefully learned a valuable lesson, and you didn't have to put up with him and likely all had a bit of extra space due to his absence. Nice. Flight attendants don't get paid on the ground. Only flying hours are paid. We are slave labor on the ground, and duties are continually added to our unpaid work time because the company knows they don't have to pay us. We show up 2 to 3 hours before we even start getting paid, and some days we'll work up to 14 hours and only get paid 5 or 6 of those hours. It should be illegal. Please be kind when you're boarding the plane and get all angry about your bags and stuff. The flight attendant is a volunteer, and while she's helping you on the ground, she's essentially doing you a favor. One split second of instinct combined with piloting skill decides if you land on the runway or on the side of it. Most of the runways are 45 meters wide, and on a gusty summer afternoon or during thunderstorms, I take God's name more than the Pope himself. Also, a smooth landing isn't necessarily a good landing. One can make a smooth landing and it'll feel good for passengers, but it could be a risky one if the pilot decides to use extra runway. Never shout at your pilot for a bad landing unless he crash lands. And if he does crash land and you shout at him, understand that you're alive because of him. As a wise man once said, better to thump it into the touchdown zone than grease it on 2/3 of the way down the runway. Bonus fact, many a times aircraft coming into land go back up in the air. This is a scary experience for many, as engines, after being relatively quiet for a while, will roar back to life and the aircraft is pulled back up. This is called a go-around. It happens because either the runway isn't clear, weather is something that can't be negotiated properly for landing, or the pilot isn't at the right place and right configuration. Go-around is actually something encouraged by all the senior trainers and authorities, as it's better to go back up in the air than be in a precarious position while forcing into land. So, whenever your pilot does a go-around, be happy that he's a safe pilot. We sat in a backed-up queue for hours in Denver one time. The weather had the airport socked in, nobody was going anywhere until this giant supercell cleared the end of the runway. During that time, suddenly there appeared a mechanic at the front of the cabin on the PA, holding up a 2-foot-long piece of metal he'd pulled from one of the tires. He explained that if the plane hadn't been sitting waiting, he might never have spotted it. It could have come flying out during takeoff, roll, and penetrated the plane's wing, igniting fuel or something like that. Everyone cheered him. What a hero. He possibly saved our lives. And to this day, I have no idea why they let him come on board and tell us this. My cousin is a flight attendant. It's not mid-flight, but airplane lines will fly attendants all over the country just in case they're needed somewhere else. My cousin had to fly out from Portland to Seattle and some other places all in one trip, never having to work. Also, if you're sick, you had to show up anyway and let the people in charge decide if you can fly or not. If you don't, you get 3 warnings, then you're fired. One of our instructors told us that he and his training buddy both fell asleep for about 45 minutes at the same time while gaining hours for licensing. The plane was on trim, which means a set altitude, not steering, in clear skies with 0 turbulence. They both swore that if they ever flew again, they would hand off sleep like handing off the controls. He told me that after both of them awoke, they were frickin' terrified. Neither had any idea what had happened or even if anything had happened. Luckily, it was just over the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, and at a low enough altitude where it wouldn't impact commercial airliners. Their trim was set before the nap, so they only gained a couple of 100 feet of altitude. But rest assured, they weren't happy with themselves. They immediately contacted air traffic control, verified their position, and turned around to go back to the airport, white palming the yoke the entire way. Oh, and this was at night too, because they needed night flying experience. There's a 600-page book in the cockpit with every single thing that could possibly go wrong, from a bulb going out to an engine falling off, a biohazard, or a bomb threat. Most airplanes don't even have a phalange. Flight attendant here, crop dusting, basically tooting whilst we walk down the aisle due to bloating. If you fly frequently, there's a high chance that a flight attendant has tooted right by your head as they walked down the aisle. The majority of the time I'm not flying the plane, I'm on the internet writing stuff, just like I am right now. As an airline agent, I can't even tell you how often the crew is hungover. More often than not. Also, the flight attendants use their personal phones and Wi-Fi in flight, but that's probably not very surprising. I'm calling absolute bullcrap that you see pilots hungover often. We can't legally fly when under the influence of alcohol. That includes being hungover. If we look hungover, it's because we woke up at 4 a.m. to fly you out at 6 a.m. and we slept in a crappy hotel bed. If anyone ever has a suspicion that a pilot is flying under the effects of booze, almost all companies have the pilot get a breathalyzer test before that flight pushes back from the gate. Yeah, I think maybe the cabin crew and flight attendants could get away with it, but I don't think the pilots could, if for no other reason than the people in charge of an airline aren't going to want their expensive machinery to be at risk because of drunk flyboys. I saw inside a cockpit when we flew home from Orlando to Norway, and the pilot was asleep. I kind of freaked out for a second, but the attendee said it's normal. It freaked me out too much. Then the second co-pilot waved at me and said hello in some other language. I'm not a pilot or flight attendant, but I have a good working relationship with my teacher and his friend who are a mechanic and pilot respectively. One such thing that happened was that he had to fix the navigation mid-flight. An uncle who was a BA first officer, a captain's errand boy as he put it, on Concorde. In 1987, North Atlantic just south of Greenland, 1140 IAS, 55,000 feet. Per military radars, a flight of Soviet fighters were practicing intercepts against it. The captain himself didn't know until they were informed on the ground. I'd have gone to flight level 62 and got IAS for at least 1200 if I'd known. Nobody short of an SR-71 could intercept that. Former flight attendant here, landing gear got stuck on descent. We flew in circles for ages, just waiting to find out if we needed to crash land or not. Luckily, the gear eventually came down, and the passengers never knew something was wrong. One time, I accidentally spilled coffee creamer on a bald guy's head while he was sleeping during service. Myself and everyone else around him silently agreed to say nothing. He looked as if a bird had pooped on his head. I still feel guilty about it. Oh, and never drink the coffee. I've never seen those machines cleaned. Flight attendant here, we never actually leave the tarmac. People think we're flying, but we really just have big screens that cover all the windows to make it look like we're in the air. But in reality, we just shuffle the planes in and out of one hangar that's behind the airport that you can't see from the road. I'm not a pilot, and this didn't happen in flight, but I saw a pilot watching an adult movie in the cockpit, on a laptop, while I was boarding the plane. It felt very inappropriate.
Police officers of Reddit, what's the weirdest thing you've caught teenagers or kids doing that is illegal but you found hilarious? I feel like a cop has a story about me and two other people. Here it goes. I was 20 at the time and was at an outdoor party with a lot of friends. Late fall, 50 degrees or so, no leaves left on the trees, roughly 50 to 60 people, mostly underage, and we were wasted. My friend's parents lived in a nice part of a bad area and owned an inflatable bounce house business. They had everything set up. A bounce house, sumo suits, massive slides, all sorts of fun stuff. Around 10:30, it's getting loud, and the police show up. Someone yells, "Cops, run!" And everyone starts running. I decide to join the crowd and end up hiding in a bush with two other people. Then reality hits. I'm wearing a white hoodie, the guy next to me has a neon yellow hoodie, and the girl had a freaking glow necklace on. The bush? No freaking leaves on it. Right then the cops walk up and starts laughing and asks, "Really guys?" and shines the flashlight directly on us. He instructs us to head back to the driveway with the other captives and gives all of us a pretty hilarious speech. Seriously, we are the Flint Police Department. We have a million things better to do than chase down a bunch of wasted minors. We were just coming by to tell you to keep the noise down. Now we were pouring out all of your drinks and calling your parents. Now we're even. I kinda had a similar experience once when I was young and foolish. A large group of underage kids were at a party one night and then we decided to go grab some food. I was quite wasted and having difficulty walking on my own, so a couple of friends were holding me up. After a while, a couple of cop cars pulled into the street that we were walking down and all of my friends scrambled. One of the guys holding me up grabs my open bottle of booze out of my hand before running off. So I am left standing on my own in the middle of the street, very obviously wasted. And the cop comes up to me, asks if I had been drinking, and I tell him yes at a party. They ask me if I have any booze on me and tell them yes, I do in my backpack. The cop just says, "Thanks for being honest. We knew about your party, and it all seemed under control there, and you guys can drink at a private place, but you can't be drinking in public. You're gonna have to pour out that drink that you have in your backpack where I can see it. Then you need to go and find your buddy who took that open bottle off you and tell him that you owe him one, because you would be in serious trouble if we found you with that open bottle. Now have a good night, and don't get into any more trouble." Then he just walks back to the car with the other guys and drives off. Took me about 20 minutes to find my friends and tell them what happened. One of them just starts laughing out loud, saying that he was hiding in a bush nearby and watched the whole thing go down, and thought I was about to get super busted. I only ever went to one party where the cops showed up. It felt like a rite of passage to run away when they showed up. Wouldn't do that today though. Had a cop search my backpack once and found a couple of drinks and a box of pee-pee balloons. I was with my friends at the time, so he was like, "Why are there 3 drinks, a box of pee-pee balloons, and only 2 dudes?" I was speechless. "To be fair, officer, now there's 3. Raunchy music intensifies." My brother was a cop who worked nights in Minneapolis. One snowy night near the U of M campus, he noticed a car weaving, so he pulled them over thinking there would be booze involved. Nope, it was a car full of deaf people having an argument which included the driver. He just told the driver not to sign and drive. Dude, that for sure is a real thing, and it's scary stuff. I have hearing impaired friends that are horrible drivers, and of course they leave the dome light on in the car to be able to communicate at night, which doesn't help the cause. I mean, I understand it must be boring to drive and not be able to listen to music, but man, that's so scary when they're trying to sign with somebody in the back seat. I've taken a couple of sign language courses in my day, and I never thought about doing signs while driving. I can totally see how that could be really scary. Not a cop, but I do have a radio scanner. Dispatcher. Reports of a teenager riding a skateboard unclothed down Westway. Cop. Is the suspect carrying a suspicious package? Yes, sir. His package appears to be fluorescent green. I'd say that's pretty suspicious. My brother is a cop, and he told me that one time he got a call at 9:30 in the morning for a suspicious person sitting in their car in our neighborhood. My bro goes up to him and asks him what he's doing. Dude is waiting for his wife to leave for work so he can go back home to play WoW all day instead of go to his own job. My bro tells him to go wait somewhere else because he's freaking out the neighbors. To clarify a few things, the guy was parked in a different neighborhood than his own because he was hiding from his wife until she left the house. So nobody knew him, and it's obviously suspicious to be idling your car in front of some random house in a neighborhood while kids are going to school. It's not illegal, but he took the good advice to go wait somewhere else, preferably more public like a Walmart parking lot or something. Also, the dude was scared as hell that the cops were going to tell his wife that he was hiding from her because he wanted to go back home and play video games. My brother, of course, doesn't give 2 craps about that. He just wants the dude to go somewhere else so people would stop calling about it and causing him needless work. I'm not sure who's weirder here, the guy who's got nothing better to do than poorly hide from his wife so he can go play video games all day, or the neighbors who have nothing better to do than look out the window all day. Hey now, I will say, if you have ever had your car broken into or have had something stolen from your house, everyone becomes suspicious after that. So I can't hate on the neighborhood watch types too much, but they shouldn't be calling the cops. My friend had a bunch of prop arms and legs in his car, college. He and his other friend were trespassing in the Northfield tunnels, Google it. And then they get back to their car where a cop is waiting. He asks to see what's in the trunk, so they open it. He jumps back a sec and quickly realizes the arms and legs are fake and he hasn't caught some type of serial killer. Then he gives them a very stern, "shut the hell up," look as he calls his partner from the car to come look at this. All shaky voiced, as he tells my friend and his friend to put their hands up, hella serious. The other cop comes over, looks in the trunk and freaks the freak out, screams and runs away back to the cop car. At which point the first cop busts out laughing and tells my friend, he was in Vietnam. And then he does the get out of here gesture and sends them on their way. So basically he used my friends to pull a super cruel practical joke on his partner. I had a friend who was a barber, so he always had those creepy mannequin heads in his car and all over his house. The kind that they use to practice cutting hair. Well, one night he was getting pulled over for a minor traffic violation. License and registration, "I'm gonna ask you to get out of your car and put your hands behind your head." So he cuffs my buddy and sits him down on the curb and then searches the car. And he pulls a mannequin head out of the back seat and he's like, "Oh, thank God. Why do you have this in your car?" My buddy explains that he's going to barber school and they practice on those things. So then he and the cop, both super stressed out at this point, sit on the curb and share a cigarette. We got a call about kids, probably 11 or 12 years old, jumping across backyards. They were looking for something to steal, I guess. We searched for them for about 15 minutes. Just as I was starting to get bored with it, I hear laughing coming from a drain pipe. It's about 4 feet tall. My mate and I decide to head in. About 30 meters down the tunnel, I can see this kid bent over on all fours, pants down around his ankles. His mate is bent over, sitting on his back while the first kid's exposing his rear end. There is a third kid kneeling next to the first kid's full moon holding a lighter. They were in the midst of doing Blue Angels, aka lighting farts in a dark tunnel. I had no freaking clue what to say. We told them to come out of the drain with us. I advised them not to tell any of their friends what they were doing in that tunnel because they would probably get the wrong reputation. And I ended up driving them within a block of one of the kids' houses so the parents didn't see that they got caught. Come out with your pants up! I was a cop in the Air Force. We had just gone into a higher threat level, and around 11 at night, I saw 3 people in an empty dark field near some power lines with shovels and a garden hoe. My partner and I decided to stop them and see what was going on, because it didn't look like civil engineering or anyone that should be out there around that hour. So we go up and see that they're about 14 or 15 years old and they're all sweating and out of breath. We asked them what they're digging for and they all say that they weren't digging, which after looking around we didn't see any dug up dirt. So my partner asked what they're doing and they hesitantly answer that they were LARPing. One of their dads shows up and scolds them, telling them how shady they look, apologizing to us, and we send them all back to the dad's house, which was about 100 yards away. I hold back my laughter until I get back to the car, where I have to explain to my partner what LARPing is and why I'm laughing. Imagine your LARPing skills being so good that the cops get called on you. My brother was once jumping his bike off the end of a public boat dock behind the city hall, which also housed our police station. They had it tethered so it wouldn't get lost on the bottom. A cop came out and watched for a while and said, "I'm fairly certain something about that is illegal, but I can't figure out what it is and that looks like fun, so be safe," and walked back inside. There weren't a lot of local kids, but they all knew that we had no issue if they wanted to stop by and do some jumps, as long as they reeled the bike in and cleared the mud off afterwards. One day a bunch of us were taking turns doing jumps and basically just messing around at the lake, when this cottage kid from down the road rides up on his brand new, very expensively tricked out BMX bike. He parks up on the road a few hundred feet away from us watching, then sees his chance and just freaking hurdles his way down the ramp. A couple people try to wave him off, but this kid just goes for it, nails it at a blistering fast speed and flies 3 or 4 times faster than any of us could ever go with the tether. He pops out of the lake waving his fist in the air, shouting and carrying on like he just stole an Oscar from Leo. He swims back to shore and everyone is just staring at him while he carries on. Eventually, one of the girls just says, "Dude, was that a new bike?" The kid's face just kind of crumpled up in defeat. We all chipped in and tried to find the bike, but our lake is flooded farmland and the bottom is 6 or 7 feet of quicksand like mud. We dove, we drudged, we poked with paddles, nothing. Kid got in so much trouble. I don't think his parents ever bought him another bike. My friend and I were skateboarding around in front of a coffee shop. Big scary security guard came over, grabbed a skateboard, rode it around the parking lot, did an ollie and a kickflip and then gave it back and left. We're talking 350 pounds, probably 35 to 40-year-old man. Our jaws were on the floor. It's always nice to hear cool cop stories instead of the awful ones you hear on the news nowadays. A few years ago, a friend and I were walking home through a residential estate, wasted after a night out. About halfway home, a police car pulls up next to us and says that they need to talk to us. They said that the CCTV in the area had observed us entering several front gardens. Since we were wasted, we tried to explain that we had been going into people's gardens and swapping around flower pots, hanging baskets and garden ornaments with their next door neighbors. One of the cops was laughing a lot and the other seemed really confused. Luckily, they got another call and just let us carry on our way. I got a call about 2 kids, maybe teenagers, smoking herb in their parked truck down by the duck pond. You know the one. Anyways, I contacted them and they were very respectful and insisted on filming me on their cell phones while I spoke to them. I told them I wasn't interested in their herb, still illegal in my state, but I wanted to make sure they got home safe, that the driver was sober enough to operate the vehicle. I did a basic field sobriety test on the driver and determined he was good to drive, all while his buddy was filming every movement and interaction. So I decided to have a little fun. By the end of the evaluation, I had the very nervous driver doing the YMCA, sprinkler move, and a janky version of the robot before he finally realized what was happening. His buddy filming realized right away. His defensive lawyer cameraman posture dissolved into a wasted kid that was now having a good time again. The driver broke down and busted up laughing before shaking my hand and hopping in his truck. The cameraman gave me a fist bump and just said, "Thank you," in a way that I took as, wow, good to know some of you are human. It's annoying that we have to live with this stigma that gets portrayed by popular media, and quite frankly, some of us deserve it, but it's still nice to know when you get through to someone. I mean, really alter their perception and break down a barrier put up by others. Cops are here to make sure people don't hurt one another. That's it. If you're going to hurt someone else, even if it's just a strong possibility, I'm your worst enemy. But if you're just swaying from societal norms that change like the weather and being yourself, have at it, man. You only live once. Okay, time to get off my soapbox. I didn't catch them, but when I arrived at my first station after graduating from the academy, I was talking to some of the guys who had been there a while. I asked if they knew my cousin, who lived in the patrol area. Turns out they did. They had a call a few years back of some kids driving around, pulling up next to cars at traffic lights and waving a huge pleasure stick at the drivers, laughing hysterically then driving off. They were pulled over, brought down to the station, and parents were notified. There was one old-timer who was a bit of a jerk, telling me that my cousin was a pervert, as were his friends. But the other guys said that they thought it was hilarious when it happened, and they never charged the kids with anything. I still mess with my cousin about this every time I see him. I'm pretty sure the Second Amendment protects the rights to pleasure sticks. When I was a teen living in the Phoenix area, we would fill up the back of a pickup with shaved ice from behind the ice rink and then build snowmen in people's yards. We would do it at night before ringing the doorbell and driving away. One time, a neighbor called the cops after hearing a couple of teens sneaking around outside. The cop came by and found out what we were doing. Instead of getting after us, he told us to follow him somewhere. We ended up making a snowman in his own front yard. He rang the doorbell and hid around the corner while his wife and their kids came outside. There are some good cops out there. Not all of them are like the ones you see shooting people without cause. Not a cop, but I was a soldier in the Army National Guard after 9/11. This informs the rest of my story. We were tasked with securing our armories immediately after 9/11 in case anyone decided to attack a soft target. This involves 24/7 armed security by soldiers with M16s in camouflage and body armor. This was immediately after the attacks, and for those who weren't old enough to remember it, stuff was weird at that time. Well, me and several fellow soldiers were guarding our couple-acre compound in the middle of a small city. Adjacent to this compound was a park with baseball fields that teenagers would go to, hook up, and party. Well, a blacked out car pulled down the road one night and my buddy was conducting a roving patrol that night, complete with night vision goggles. Well, they weren't in our compound, but they were pretty suspicious, so we called local law enforcement. By this time, I had met my fellow soldier out back to keep an eye on them. 4 cop cars come screaming down this entrance and draw their weapons. These kids were terrified. When they found out the cops were called, they asked who called. The cops shined their lights over at us and there stood 3 soldiers in camouflage with helmets, tactical vests, night vision goggles, and M16 staring back at them. We never saw that car again. I can only imagine the stories that they tell their friends. They were released and as far as I know, no charges were brought against them. I'm pretty sure when those kids talk about that story, they end up saying, "It was just like COD, bro." One of my friends from a couple of semesters ago was a cop a few cities over. He was a cool guy and we worked on our first class presentation together. Anyways, I'm sitting in my car before our class at 7 p.m. and I decided I'm going to smoke before class. This class was required, but almost insultingly easy. I usually walk around the parking lot with my J, but security guards were doing their rounds. And while they have a reputation of being pretty laid back, I didn't want to take a chance. So I'm in my car lighting up and casually reading my textbook. It's getting kinda smoky in my car, so I look around and then I crack a window to let the smoke out. Then when I saw security was gone, I rolled the window all the way down, ashed my J, and put it back in my mouth and got back to reading. Then out of the corner of my left eye, I see a cop car coming my way. It passed behind me and I didn't think anything of it because at this point I was already zoned out. When I realized that the J was still in my mouth, I got one of those sharp pains of terror that starts in your chest and shoots all the way up to your head. And your wasted brain is like, "Freak, we're freaked up, man." I started looking around for the cop car and I didn't see it. Then I looked out my passenger window and was like, "Man, thank God my windows are tinted." It was at this moment that I noticed my driver's side window wasn't as dark as it usually is. My brain is thinking, maybe it has to do with the placement of the light? Maybe it's because I'm closer to it? Is it because oh freak, it's because I left it open? After that realization, I saw headlights again and I just knew it was the cop car. Sure enough, the berries come on and over the speaker I hear, "Show me your hands." I do as he says and I show him my hands. "Open the door from the outside and step outside of the vehicle." So I do just that. "Hands, hands, I want to see them." Oh Christ almighty, they think I'm a dealer or something, and I can't even explain myself. I'm so freaking zoned out right now. "Put your hands on the roof of the vehicle and take one step back." Crap, I can do this. "Don't move those goddamn hands." Oh man, oh man, oh man. "Now twerk." What? "Twerk." Wait, did he just tell me to twerk? What the freak? I turn around and look at the cop car and then I just hear, "Twerk, twerk, twerk, hands on the car and twerk, twerk, twerk." At this point, I'm not sure what to do or think. The officer gets out of his car and it's the dude from my class. He said he saw me smoking up in my car and wanted to mess with me. I don't know how to explain what it felt like going to class after that. Hey now, I think it's fair game for cops to mess with you if they catch you doing something illegal. I think getting embarrassed is better than getting arrested. I rolled up on a group of kids trespassing on a patch of land at night. They didn't know they were technically breaking the law because there was no signage when they came in. I planned to tell them that they needed to leave, but one of them took me aside and told me that they were taking an out-of-town friend on a snipe hunt as a much-deserved act of revenge. I couldn't resist and I joined in. Winks and nods were exchanged. I called my shift on a radio back channel and the snipe hunter was called front and center. I informed him that the snipe is an endangered species and that the act of hunting one was a felony punishable by 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. All of his conspirators denied snipe hunting, saying that they were just stargazing and didn't know the guy that was doing the hunting. He was just standing there, wide-eyed, and literally holding a bag of snipe stick in his other hand. He stuttered and stammered an excuse, and insisted the conspirators were lying. About that time, 3 more cruisers appeared, lights and all, as if choreographed. We all stepped aside and the sheriff himself made an entrance and assessed the whole situation. Dead silence. After he made the inquiries, we all busted out laughing. The whole otherwise very slow night was captured in a group photo, complete with the victim, his friends, my shift, and the sheriff. Man, this must have been hilarious. I wish I met some cops like that when I was younger. The only one I met threatened to take my friend to jail because he had a license plate on his bike that we found in a ditch. Then the cop banned all of us from skating on one of the largest streets in my city, when we didn't really do anything. It's interactions like that that make some people dislike cops, in my opinion.
Ex-homeless people, where did you go during the day? The library, brah, that's a no-brainer. Communication, opportunity, education, and entertainment, all available there for free. That is an excellent suggestion. I always just thought if I went homeless, I'd maintain my gym membership, use the showering facilities, apply for jobs, get really, really into exercising, attempt to completely dominate any local bum fights. Never actually been homeless, which is good, but probably the closest was in August when I drifted around for work on a bike. Had a book bag with mostly clothing, as well as a sheet, a canteen, and a salt container, because salt is pretty useful, and an empty flask. On the handle was a container with food, water, and some utensils. Across the handlebar was a loosely tied walking stick for protection. In case I needed to, I could stay somewhere like the local church. However, I managed to get home by dark, so all was good. I will say the water factory wasn't easy, since I had to keep refilling it, and then once my bike fell with my container, and the gallon jug of water broke. If I actually had to, I could squat in the woods, but that is illegal, so I rather wouldn't want to. Plus, with all the bugs and snakes around, I would need to make a raised shelter and have screening. I had some that fit around my head and fit under my hat pretty good too. Hopefully, you don't have to be homeless. Well, unless you want to, but then you have issues like food, water, dry place to sleep, animals, hunters, people attacking you, etc. Daytime, just be a regular person. Go to work, walk around the city, chill on your laptop at McDonald's or Wendy's with free Wi-Fi, libraries, parks, chill with friends. At night, you have to hide and sleep. This was the challenge. I slept in my car a lot, in the employees' parking areas of 24-hour stores. Less foot traffic and cops expect cars to be there all night. Plus, if you want a midnight snack or bathroom break, the store has them. Gotta love Walmart. Also, I'd sleep on the floor in my office at my university. Research assistant throughout undergrad. Again, free Wi-Fi, outlets, safety, bathrooms, and free water and tea. I volunteered a lot back then, in large part for places to go. I volunteered at a large urban hospital in a couple departments and got a bunch of department-specific waiting room door codes that I'd use to sleep. Wi-Fi, safety, quiet. One of my volunteer gigs was on a hotline. For that one, I got keys to a private bedroom in the hospital with a fully stocked mini-fridge, snack basket, meal cards, free parking, bookshelf, TV, 2 twin beds, and a beautiful view. I had to return the key at the end of every shift, though. Damn, this guy was on the grind, not even for money, but a place to rest his weary little head. I was homeless for about a month earlier this year, lucky enough to have a truck with a bed cap and an old futon mattress in the bed. During the day, I worked. I had a decent, easy, minimum wage job working as a lift operator at a local ski hill. Made enough to afford food, gas, and a gym membership. Shout out Anytime Fitness for being open 24 hours and having internet, while still having a little bit at the end of the day. If I wasn't working, I'd be at the gym working out or downloading some podcasts to listen to later. I pursued anything that was cheap, which would pass a good amount of time. I was pretty lucky. I chose to be homeless because the people I was renting a room from were growing increasingly unstable, and I was going to leave my job at the end of the season and move across the country anyways. I was also friends with a really great couple who often insisted I sleep on their couch. Definitely not the worst story you'll hear, but it was my brush with the phenomenon. I'd sleep in my car in the parking lot at my law school because my classes started at 8 a.m. After class, I'd go to work at one of my 3 jobs, 2 of which were bar and restaurant serving jobs, so that's where I'd get my meal for the day. After my night shift, I'd use a friend's guest pass at the gym to shower and get ready for the next day. Then I'd drive back to the school parking lot and knock out in my back seat. I did my makeup in the car in the morning before classes, so I made sure my appearance really never gave away that I was homeless. I did laundry at the laundromat sometimes, but I typically cycled through the same 3 to 4 outfits throughout the week. But yeah, the routine was always the same for the most part. It really depended on the job I was working, the time of year, and the weather. I was pretty steadily employed, but my shifts ranged from early morning to late at night, so my schedule wasn't always predictable. This meant that some days I would be at work, and other days, if it was warm, I'd try to sleep outside in one of the local parks or nature areas. I tried to fit in as much sleep as possible during the daylight hours because it was less cold and infinitely less scary when sleeping outside. It also wasn't really odd to see people napping or lounging about in the parks, so I didn't stand out much. I was in a college town at the time, and the park areas were always full of students in various states of undress and repose. If it was raining or wintry, I would either spend my days trying to stay warm in a cafe somewhere or hiding in a tiny water heater closet in the basement of one particular apartment building. The front door lock was busted. Weirdly enough, the water heater closet also had a sink and toilet in it. That's where I would do most of my cleaning up and grooming. Was homeless at around 17 for a while. Was lucky enough to sleep in a youth hostel at night, but we had to leave around 8 a.m. and return at 9 p.m. It was winter. A few of us homeless teens would hang around the library for the warmth and the computers. We would shoplift, we would beg, not panhandle, but asking random people if they had a spare quid for the bus. And we would buy pizza and share it. Sometimes bottles of cheap cider if we had enough money or were brave enough to steal alcohol from a store. I used to shoplift new underwear and the shirts and socks a lot. I justified it by telling myself that these were multi-million-pound companies who wouldn't miss a skirt or the shirt here and there and a bit of makeup now and again. I never steal now. It was so boring being homeless. That was all there was for us to do, shoplift and drink. We made a big igloo once and got drunk in that. That was pretty fun. We hung around the town every day with nowhere else to go. The museum staff knew us all by name and didn't like us very much, although we didn't do anything wrong there. I spent a lot of my time in the museum, aquarium, reading books if I wasn't drunk. A lot of the teens I lived with had been in and out of foster care all their lives. I was lucky. I was homeless due to being out of control and my parents being unable to cope with me. I don't blame them, to be honest. Undiagnosed ADHD and ODD can cause somebody to become extremely rebellious and often addicted to illegal substances. I'm a lot better now, and my relationship with my family is amazing. Good for you. Get bus tokens from shelter, eat breakfast, then to the transit authority to attempt exchanging bus tokens for cash by asking to buy people's light rail tickets and getting the dollar they were going to use. We just hop the train anyway. Apply at jobs, interview if I had one, library for online applications and reading, escapism, get lunch with the money collected from bus tokens, probably meet up with the homeless people I knew to see if anything exciting happened to them, or go back to the shelter for dinner. Hop train to downtown, there are pianos scattered throughout the downtown, none in tune really, but well decorated. Some kind of art thing from the university, play piano for money, go back to the shelter to see if there's enough beds. We went on sort of a GBP system. If there was overflow, girls get priority. If you're sleeping outside, see if you can get a blanket and go to hidden spots we mapped out where there are no lawn sprinkler alarm clocks. Back in summer of 2009, my family and I got evicted from our ranch property. We took a couple of our dogs with us, and for a couple nights, we had to sleep in a cramped car with them. Later on, we got vouchers to stay in an extended stay hotel, and I lived there for about 4.5 months until I moved out into a group home and the rest of the family moved into a house. My mother passed away during the homeless period, though. Jeez Louise, that must have been so stressful to deal with on top of the homelessness. Your mom? Man, I'm sorry. Job interviews when I wasn't working on a couple of part-time jobs. If I wasn't doing either of those, I was filling out applications for jobs or just mucking about on my laptop at a Barnes & Noble's. I was homeless in the summer until that winter, but for the most part, it actually wasn't really that bad. I slept in my car at night in the lot of a Walmart until they told me they didn't want me there anymore. Finding a new one was a pain. The holidays sucked, Thanksgiving, Christmas, because my family knew I was in that situation, but no one even offered to have me visit. Not that I would have, and they wondered why I do everything I can not to talk to them now. I did not have it nearly as rough as some. I was working, so I was covered 5 days a week. On the days off, I had a car that I slept in at night. On days off, I suppose I looked for a place to live or found some friends and hung out. It was a long time ago. I was a homeless teen at age 14 when my mom kicked me out of the house for a trivial disagreement. She was a loony at the time. I had no friends I could count on at the time because it was busy and didn't want to bother them. I thought I would get to come back home after a day or so. Days became weeks, then months. It wasn't until my brother, who saw me underneath a freeway overpass, hunkered down with a Mexican family as he drove by, stopped to take me into his place. So my day started out with just walking towards downtown. I was about 15 miles away and had a good general sense of direction. The churches would offer shelter, and there was some good Samaritan houses that offer teens shelter with a stipulation of having to listen to sermons every day and study the Bible. I got tired of that real fast and left those as quickly as I came. You couldn't stay within downtown unless you were near the homeless shelter. There was also an unlawful homeless tent city on an abandoned lot nearby where families would set up. But you had to get out quickly if the cops or ICE showed up. I went to an inner-city school. None of them knew I was homeless. I kept to myself and kept my whereabouts to myself. There were other teens who were homeless too. They all hung out near the railroad underpass. We got by on whatever food we could get that was free at the school cafeteria. That would be our only meal for the day. You quickly learn that even as a teenager or a child, people from the outside don't care about you or treat you the same way as a common criminal. Normal people have busy schedules and gotta keep up, so they don't bat an eye when they see a kid underneath an overpass. I probably saw up to 1,000+ cars every rush hour. It's the constant drone of cars going by and realizing you're even more alone. Luckily, my brother, who I haven't seen in many years because he moved out due to my mom's craziness, saw me and offered me a ride home. I told him no because Mom kicked me out and he understood why. So he offered me a place to stay at his place in the suburbs. I'm married now and have a good job. I did settle with a GED and then piled on a bunch of IT certifications. Last time I went to Texas and passed underneath the same overpass, there are still families in tent encampments scattered outside of downtown Fort Worth. Some within view, some hidden. Well, speaking from a perspective that most people will easily recognize, my homelessness has everything to do with substance abuse. Everybody that you see panhandling outside on a street corner, that's what's up. A much larger percentage of homeless people aren't doing that because their homelessness is a critical problem that they're scrambling to fix. They're working jobs and staying in shelters or cars. I can't speak for that lifestyle because I didn't live it, but think the normal answer is working their butts off in the worst jobs the economy's offering. But for me, during the day and during the night, I went where the action was because I was trying to stay wasted. If there was no action, I'd ask for spare change. I've got to say, I'm surprised that you aren't asking about where to crash, which is the much harder part. I was young and part of a scene, so couches and sometimes squats were generally my objective. About a dozen times I slept rough outside. It sucked, but not as much as being sober and with my family. I thought then. For some of the older guys I'd run with, middle-aged dudes mostly, who weren't part of any kind of scene, they mostly had usual spots that they'd post up on and claim as theirs. Loading docks, warm grates, anything sheltered with a heat source is optimal, but hidden is best. Man, this is making me depressed. I spent Thanksgiving, Christmas, and my birthday in a shelter. I was robbed twice, got food poisoning twice from the shelter food, and came pretty damn close to committing self-deletion, to the point where the knife was at my wrist and the voices were saying it would only hurt for a moment and then I would be at peace and with my mother again. But through all of that, I'm still here, I'm married, and I have a 4-year-old little girl, and while I will do everything in my power to make sure the same never happens to her, I feel confident in saying that through all of that bad and darkness, I am still standing, I'm still here, and I am who I am today because of what I had to do to survive. Current homeless. During the days, I work at the local food bank for my city. Currently trying to enlist in the army because it's frickin' miserable out here, and I want to really do something with my life. Even in the shelters, it's just depressing. Other than that, I found a pretty decent shelter, and at night and on weekends, I read a ridiculous amount and work out. But as someone else said, the days are gravy and the nights are what you have to worry. Well, I was a late teen, young adult when I was homeless, and I lost my identification early on, so most of what I did during the day was scrambling to find a new place to lay my head that night, or try and beg and borrow enough money to buy a pack of smokes, bus fare, backup sleeping spot, coffee money. When I gave myself downtime or when I already knew that sleep and food and cigs were taken care of for the day, I'd go to the library, fart around on the free internet, read a book, hang out with other homeless people in the area, and yeah, a bunch of us would do whatever illegal substances we could get for a reasonable price. i.e. under $10 for 2 people usually, so don't worry, it was mostly pot. Getting high was an easy escape, and worth it at twice the price if us poor dudes had it on us. Day or night, unless I had to be indoors to have a safe place to sleep, that was pretty much the routine. Walk around to keep yourself warm on cold days, stand or sit down on warm ones, sing a cappella in the parking garage stairway, entertain yourself to distract you from the bottomless pit your life is right now. Buy coffee at a 24-hour greasy spoon and stay inside, sitting down for as long as they'll let you. Sometimes if I was sleepy and it was dry and warm outside, I'd sleep in a park with the sun beating on my back. Best feeling in the world. I was lucky enough to be homeless in a major urban center, with a lot of resources and a generally caring public, even if most couldn't look me in the eyes. My experience was overall more positive than negative, even if it did suck sleeping on cobblestone sometimes, or feeling your feet slowly congeal or rot from 34 degrees Fahrenheit rain soaking through your worn soles and nowhere to change your socks. That last bit right there, that's the struggle. The wet socks. I couldn't deal with it. No, I'm joking. This is all awful. I was homeless my junior year of college when I got laid off from my internship, which was supposed to be 1 year but only lasted 3 months, and didn't have time to find student housing. My significant other told me I could stay at their place, but conveniently forgot to tell their roommates this. It was hell, and so I only went there once or twice a week. I spent all my time on campus, worked 2 part-time jobs through the school and 1 part-time job remotely. Told everyone I was trying out no shampoo to be more environmentally friendly. It was fall, so I slept in my car most nights somewhere on campus. Never got bothered by campo, but sometimes other students would see me sleeping and bang on the windows of the car to wake me up, which scared the bejesus out of me every time. My friend has been homeless in the Seattle area for 2 of the last 3 years. He goes to the public library during the day after it closes. He normally will go stay in his car until later in the evening. He then goes to the gym at about midnight to work out and shower or clean clothes, etc. I know several people have mentioned it, but I knew I was onto something with the gym membership, especially Anytime Fitness. I go to Anytime Fitness. I went to work during the day. My mom died suddenly and it hit my dad hard. He basically lost it. He was married to another woman who I had met once. 6 months later, he moved to another state and heavily implied that I couldn't go with him. I had a job here anyways. I had to sleep in my car for about 2 weeks during March in New England, which was cold as hell. Luckily, I work at a university, so I could shower and such there. My best friend's dad found out and insisted that I stay with him. He really helped me out. I was with him on his couch for 4 months before I got myself a studio apartment. Okay, this one gives me hope. See, I guess the real answer to being homeless is, as long as you have good friends and, a good work ethic, maybe you can pull yourself out of that hole. I was working in a job that provided housing as part of your payment. In that field, it's kind of an expectation that either they pay you enough to cover housing or they give you a place to stay for the time of your contract. My boss was a flake with an anger problem who refused to take responsibility for himself or his actions. In this setup, there were 3 apartments above this over a dentist office, which the landlord worked in. He came barging into my coworker's apartment next to mine at 7 a.m. when he was sleeping, demanding us to pay rent or get out. Turns out, my boss hadn't paid rent for 15 months to this guy and had been dodging his calls and visits. We, as the subletters, had no idea our rent wasn't being paid. We had 1 week to get out all of our stuff and the company's furniture. We got everything into storage and placed all our personal belongings in our cars. My coworker knew some friends that he stayed with, but I had nowhere to go. For a month while my boss tried to find a new place for us to have as company housing, I lived in my car, went to my first job as a before-school care teacher, went to McDonald's for breakfast, went to work at the Shafty place, went to the little dive bar for a cheap dinner and stayed till close to go back to my car. This whole situation was a wake-up call that I needed to not just find a new job, but a new career. I left and I'm very happy to say that with the help of friends, I don't have the fear of losing my job and my house just because my boss sucks. You know what? It's a serious situation. It's real life. I understand you can't dedicate yourself to this, but I'm really surprised that your first priority was not revenge. I happened to find an office building that I could blend into well enough. I was still able to shower, etc., and used my savings to look after basic needs. I got inspiration from the building that my mom used to work in. It seemed all high security until you went up a couple floors in the elevator. After that, no security at all, and I had access to the Wi-Fi, kitchen, food, bathrooms. It's super easy to blend in if you look like you know what you're doing. I was homeless a few days ago in London, all of last week actually, and have been many times since I was 16. 23 now, but I don't look it. I have an iPhone, nice clothes, a nice bag, just had nowhere to go. Good places to go. Heathrow Airport to get some sleep with everyone else who's waiting for a flight. 24-hour Mackie D's just to chill on Reddit. Parks, if they're open. Hyde Park in central London never closes, but they can be scary at night, so I make sure to have something on me to defend myself. Late night arcades, ask a driver to let you on and ride buses until morning. It's warmer and safer than outside. Go to a bar, people ask you to chill with them and buy you drinks. I don't do this, but I've been offered a lot, so I know it works. I hope I help someone. It's cold and snowing right now. I'm on the way to the first day of my new job now. Hopefully won't lose my house ever again. I didn't consider myself homeless even though I technically was. My boyfriend at the time and I broke into an old industrial building in Brooklyn and squatted in it for about 6 months, which is eons by squatters' standards. He'd found these pieces of foam material which we put on the floor, and then we stuffed some black plastic bags full of our unseasonal clothes and laid that on top of the foam stuff to be our mattress. We accumulated some random other pieces of stuff that had been put out on the street for trash pickup. I remember we found this metal chest that we used as a fridge. We got Wi-Fi because, I kid you not, my then boyfriend overheard this neighbor lady walking her dog next to our window and she was calling the dog Bingo. He checked the networks on his laptop and tried a few passwords using the dog's name and hit on the one that had Bingo123 as the password. The hardest part was bathing. No tub or shower. I bathed out of a bucket the entire time. Also, we were there in the winter, December, late April, so it was cold. I remember my boyfriend would wake up and climb out from under the blankets, and I'd start howling because I was freezing without his body heat. Like quite a lot of other people, I had a job, 2 jobs actually, during this period, so I'd be at work most of the day, but I was much better off than most, because I did have 4 walls and a roof and blankets and food. What is one country that you will never visit again? Egypt. Cairo looks/is a war zone. Turrets on street corners, tanks, soldiers with automatic weapons everywhere. We had an armed police officer on the tour bus, Rhodes Scholar, and nothing against them. They are a great company to travel with. A police escort everywhere. Bomb dogs, a guy with a mirror looking under the bus for bombs. Cairo is dirty, littered, and the poverty is staggering. The food was meh at best as we could not travel outside the hotel or tour path to eat. It was blisteringly hot. The camel guys at the pyramids were mean to all of the women and the animals, with children working there as well. The Egyptian Museum was a disgrace to the country. Poorly organized, bad labels, no security, priceless textiles, parchments, leathers, etc., jumbled in cases exposed to the air, heat, hands, no AC. The only thing well cared for and secured were Tutankhamun's artifacts. It's a spectacular resource and collection, and so badly cared for, with no curation. The new one's just opened. I sure hope it's better. Once you've seen one temple, one hieroglyphic, you've truly seen them all. It's all about tourist money, and the street vendors were relentless and scary. Even on a nice open boat ride down the Nile, kids paddled up to the boat on wooden doors selling cheap crap or just begging. Never again. This just reminded me how when I was a kid I had the Mummy on videotape. I watched it relentlessly, and I did not want to go to Egypt ever because I thought the scarab beetles actually crawled under your skin and killed you. No offense, but screw the Bahamas. It's a tourist trap and not a very good one at that. More like a third world country trying to play capitalism. I'll just put it out there, none of the thoughts on these places are mine. The Gambia in West Africa. I've traveled to over 40 countries in my life, including Egypt, Morocco, India, and Cameroon, and the Gambia is by far the worst of the bunch. Went there in 2009 with my girlfriend. We were 20 at the time. It is by far the most corrupt country in the world. Let me start by saying it's a beautiful country, and the people there are the friendliest people you could wish to meet, but the way they are treated by the government is disgusting. We met a local guy there called Jimmy Brave, who lived in a hut on the beach with his young family. Amazing guy, cooked us dinner every night and never wanted anything but friendship in return. We gave him a fair bit of money on our last day, more than we usually would because he genuinely didn't want it. Anyway, one night we decided we wanted to check out the nightlife in the tourist area where it was safe. So my friend Jimmy agreed to meet us by the hotel entrance at 7 p.m. Then we would take him for dinner and hit a few bars. We got to the front of the hotel just before 7 p.m. and Jimmy wasn't there. We waited around an hour, still no Jimmy. At this point, we assumed he had forgot, so we went back to our rear exit onto the beach and to his hut. His wife said he had gone to meet us over an hour ago. We searched for about 4 hours and still couldn't find him, so his wife suggested we call the local tourist police. We called and they confirmed he had been arrested for loitering in front of the hotel. We agreed to meet the head of police and arrived at the police station. This is where it got shady. We went in and sat at a desk in an empty, dark room. A big African guy in army clothing came in and sat in front of us. The guy had 2 cigs in his mouth, smoking both at the same time. He slams his fist on the table and starts shouting at us, demanding £500, probably a year's wage over there, to release Jimmy. Obviously, we refused after about an hour of arguing and various threats against us. We were a young white couple at the time, and they assumed we were wealthy. We managed to agree on £70 and a 200 pack of cigarettes. We paid, and we were told to wait outside. We were out there for over 2 hours, and they brought the wrong guy out. We only knew our friend as Jimmy Brave, not his real name, so this proved challenging. Anyway, I was invited in to show the police who Jimmy was and had to pick him out of a huge cell filled with at least 300 people, some who were very close to death. Anyway, Jimmy spotted me straight away and we had him released. When we go far enough from the police station, Jimmy broke down in tears. I've never seen a grown man cry like this in my life. He lifted up his top and he had several large open wounds where they had been whipping him in the cell and the police truck. We immediately took him to the hospital where he remained for 2 days at a cost of £240-ish. The hospital doctors were great. So, bear in mind he was beaten, whipped around 50 times, hard, just for waiting outside our hotel to take us for drinks. And he was only released because we paid. If we had never turned up, he said he would have died in there. They don't release the criminals until somebody pays the corrupt police chief. There were literally people dying in front of my eyes in the cell. I've always swore if I became rich, I will be going back there just to release as many of these people as I possibly can, except any dangerous people who actually deserve to be there, obviously. This wasn't the only corruption from the police we saw while there. It's just the main point. We see police walking down the streets slapping women and kids for absolutely no reason. One cop told me he would murder anyone I point out right now for £50. He had an AK. I saw people dragged in the back of trucks, never to be seen again, just for asking people for a bottle of water. I feel really sorry for the majority of people in the Senegambia, as they are amazing, happy people who have to live in constant fear of the police and government. I should say, Jimmy managed to move to the UK in 2016 with the help of me and another British family he met in Gambia. He now lives in Stoke-on-Trent, which is a few hours from where I live, but we talk on Facebook regularly and meet up once or twice a year. Haiti went on a medical mission. One day was spent at the beach. We got caught in the middle of a protest. I was groped. Several other people were punched. It was terrifying. They only stopped when one of our translators yelled that we were medical workers. We only ended up spending 1 hour at the beach so we wouldn't end up driving back through the same area at night. When we reached that area, it was clear of people. A few overturned vehicles were on fire. A UN detail was hanging out in a big armored vehicle with a very large gun on top. I can't imagine how bad it is now with all of the civil unrest. As of current year and my understanding of the geopolitical and situation that is taking place in Haiti, it has gotten significantly worse. Jamaica. Went for a chill vacation with my then college girlfriend and were very turned off by being asked if we wanted to buy weed every 20 steps. Despite popular misconceptions, weed was quite illegal in Jamaica at the time. I smoked at home in the US occasionally, but wasn't into it this trip and didn't want to risk getting arrested in a foreign country. 3 days in and they're wearing us down, so we consider buying a joint. That same day, a tour guide on our river tour warns us without prompting that dudes will sell you weed and then cross the street to tell the cops for an informant fee that you've got weed, after which you get tossed in Jamaican jail and have to bribe your way out. Also, the food was meh. Japan. I'm fat, black, and none too cute. Older people spit at me, no one would sit next to me on the train or would make it painfully obvious they were uncomfortable during rush hours. Young people, adults, teens, older kids, had no filter and would happily laugh at me, make faces, or even throw things at me, though that was only in Shibuya. It was hard for me to get work as a teacher, even with my training and credentials, because I had to have my picture and no one wanted a black and ugly teacher. I felt like a monster the entire time and slowly shut myself away until I had quit my jobs and only left at night to get food from a convenience store. The last time I went outside during the day in Japan, I was going to cancel my cell phone plan before I left. And there, kids and teens pointed and laughed before running away screaming I was a monster. I was mortified when the adults looked at me and I could hear them go, "Well, look at her." It took me 4 months back home to leave my apartment during the day in the States. I didn't go thinking I'd be loved, just thought I'd have a nice experience in my 20s. Japan is a modern, beautiful country with wonderful people, but I just didn't get lucky enough to meet them. My pet peeve is when I mention this. People go, "Oh, Japan was great to me. You must have done something wrong." I'm glad you had a good time. I hope the next person has a great time too. But this happened to be my experience. That's all. Dubai. While interesting, it's really just a total rip-off of Western culture. I flew 12 hours from New York City only to be surrounded by Cheesecake Factory, Wendy's, California Pizza Kitchen, etc. No real culture. Isn't Dubai like a relatively new city by age standards? It's like decades old. I know that the original Dubai was like a fishing village or some crap, I think. But then obviously they modernized and now they're like one of the wonders of the world apparently, that loads of people love to visit as tourists. Cambodia, but only because I was mugged in Phnom Penh. Well, it's a holiday in Cambodia. It's tough, kid, but it's life. It's a holiday in Cambodia. Don't forget to pack a wife. I apologize. I heard Cambodia and I went, yeah, dead Kennedys. Venezuela. I visited my extended family there near Caracas as a young child and had an amazing time, but things there have really gone south since then. Pretty much all my family members that were there have left for obvious reasons. China. I had to go there a couple of times for work, but the feeling of being surveilled, the pollution, the horrible pedestrian experience, and getting scammed by a cabbie turned me off. Thailand. Went there during the coup in 2013. Got stuck. Too much prostitution and child smut and prostitution out in the open for me. Also, being there during the coup and getting a crazy flu and hospitalized in Bangkok frickin' sucked. Love my Thai friends, but Bangkok and Pattaya are just too crazy for me. Singapore. Great company and friendly people, except on the first day I was in a sports bar, beaten up. My assaulter was a man, which I later learned was the boyfriend to a woman I asked to dance. Sucker punched and went to the floor immediately. Getting kicked, people intervened after what felt like a minute when he picked up a chair to continue. That per se would not have been a reason not to visit it anymore, it's what followed. The bartender told me I should leave ASAP and sleep it off. After multiple hits against the head, or he will get the police involved and tell them I started the fight. Since I suspected a concussion, I called 911. I fled the bar and called 911 on the streets. There, the bartender or manager followed me with two big employees of his and tried to get me with slight force in his back office to talk so I don't ruin my life and that of my family in a lawsuit. I actually had to shout on a full street something silly like, "Emergency, help, help," multiple times at some point so he and his men would leave me alone. It was clearly meant as imposing, and I am very thankful I didn't follow him in his office with his two strongmen. Eventually, the ambulance came. I got first aid and made my statement. While I heavily tried to get any information off the police and visited them and my embassy multiple times, there I noticed they had no interest in following my case. There were multiple security cameras, a bar, and a street full of witnesses in a lively and well-esteemed shopping/entertainment area. Just no interest of the police to get bad reputation for their city-state, I suppose. Singapore has a very low crime rate, but I'm quite sure my attack never showed up in any statistic whatsoever. Emails and follow-ups by myself, insurance, and my local police were ignored, just dead silent and condolence from my embassy. Still have minor sight issues on my left eye and very minor headaches after 4 years. Yeah, let this be a reminder or maybe even a note to people who don't know, but one bad hit in the head can really mess up or just completely ruin someone's life. Which is why one-hit KO challenges are stupid and cruel, and you're a dirtbag if you do them. UAE, Dubai frickin' sucks. Built on slavery, arrogant, money, and power-drunk locals. If you're a chick without a man nearby, the men aggressively flirt. Read the Gulf News if you want to see horror stories of how they treat migrant workers. You couldn't pay me to live in that overblown crap hole of big, empty buildings. Afghanistan. I would love to go back and be a tourist, but I don't think I will ever have the opportunity, nor would it be responsible now that I have a family to vacation there. The country is absolutely beautiful, and the weather was nice. The people are one of the kindest, most respectful cultures I have ever had the pleasure of working with, full of beautiful traditions and fantastic food. Sadly, they have their issues, and it wouldn't be wise to risk going there as a tourist. A real shame too, because I'd love to visit the resorts in Bamiyan and go skiing and snowboarding there too. Qatar. I worked there for 15 months. Appalling treatment of workers. Very, very hot. Terrible food, and the whole country is a building site getting ready for the World Cup next year. After that, the country will be empty. Nothing to do apart from work and shopping. Iran. I'm half Iranian, but I was born and raised in Europe. I went a few times between 10 and 13 years old, and the last time I went, I started feeling the weight of being a woman. I was hanging out with my aunt in the capital. I turned my head around and my scarf fell off. I had full sleeve coverage in the middle of the summer. Immediately, the moral police circled us and asked why my head was uncovered. My aunt told them off, but that really stayed with me. It was over 15 years ago, and I can't imagine my grown adult self fearing the police because my headscarf won't stay in place. I do miss my family, and I have amazing memories of visiting the historical sites, but I refuse to suppress my womanhood and self in order to be there. Australia. As an American, I was made to feel unwelcome on a daily and hourly basis basis, and I'm a worldly American who never had problems with anyone, even Parisians. I was there for 2 months and was subjected to things like being called a seppo, which is extremely insulting and rude. Hardly a day went by where I didn't hear that word. And when you take exception to it, they gaslight you like you're too uptight and you can't take a joke and you're the problem. And I got made fun of for holding my utensils a certain way while eating. People down there, I found, were rubes with no manners. Add to the daily generalized ignorant questions, why do all Americans, or you frickin' Americans? Someone actually asked me, why do all Americans' phone numbers start with 555? I am not making that up. Then you turn on the news or a talk show and listen to more snide remarks. It doesn't strike me as a good deal to spend all that money to be subjected to unprovoked hostility on a daily basis. I would not recommend that any American go down there. See, I for one am most definitely going to Australia one day. I have wanted to ever since I played goddamn the Tasmanian Tiger on PlayStation 2. Actually, the more I think about it, I did just have a general fascination with Australia as a kid. Anyway, if anything, let this story be a lesson that no matter who you are and where you go, there is always somewhere where you can be discriminated against. I flew into Germany on my way to Denmark and had a 6-hour wait at the Frankfurt train station before catching my bus to Copenhagen. I don't know if it was just the particular area of Frankfurt I was in, but it was mad depressing. The number of homeless people made San Francisco look good, and so many of them were harassing me for money and clearly suffering from illegal substance addiction. A woman followed me for 4 blocks trying to proposition me to pay her $20. Didn't see any food that looked appetizing. People were very cold and unfriendly, and the music was corny beyond belief. Germany's another place I'd like to visit, but it's mostly because I heard they have like the biggest indoor water park in the world, and it looked awesome. China. I made the mistake of going to Shanghai while being of Polynesian descent and was really taken aback by the open racism. I had my hair pulled. Some businesses wouldn't serve me if I went without a Chinese person, and people looked at me like I was disgusting. It ruined many a picture. Comments were also made. I really thought that Shanghai would be okay because it's such an international city, but damn was I mistaken. America. Don't feel like I really have a reason to return and everything just feels too big to me. Don't have family there, thought it was grand and can see why some people love visiting, but just not my cuppa, especially in the summer. Meanwhile, I'd love to go back to Italy again, but go further north this time. Yeah, I can definitely see why people would have that impression of America for sure. Narnia. Went with some siblings. My younger brother hit it off with an older woman, but she turned out being a real female dog, ruining the trip for everyone. Also, the animals talked. 3 out of 10. Yeah, I know that one's not for real. I just thought it was kind of funny. I hope that I never have to go back to Jordan. I am a 60-year-old woman and was traveling with another woman my age about 4 years ago. We were so excited to see Petra and to learn about the culture. Instead, we had more than one sexist male tour guide who was verbally anti-Western and Europe. Okay, I can understand politics for sure. However, we, American and Europeans, according to one guide, are responsible for men turning gay, and that Jordanian men were never gay until they saw such things on American and European television. Oh, another one? We're filthy because we have dogs in our houses. Yet another said that he'd never let his wife wear makeup. We wear makeup and we were traveling, just 2 gal pals. Anyway, the food sucks. Their national dish is some slop called mansaf. It tastes like a sheep died of old age and was then slow boiled in poor quality yogurt for 2 days. I then met up with some very cool Palestinians in Hebron after that. They invited me to lunch at their home and I was shocked at the delicious food. I told them that I just came from Jordan and they laughed and said that they all agreed that Jordanian food is garbage. I don't know, I'm looking at the mansaf. It looks alright. It looks like it could be nice. It's not the most appealing thing, but I like the bed of rice it's on. Not a country, but just one city. Malmö. I spent about 1 month and a half in Sweden a few years ago and visited many cities and loved every minute of that trip. However, something about Malmö made me feel uneasy. I felt like I was in a dystopian novel in which everyone said we were in Sweden, but it did not feel like Sweden. Brazil. This won't be a popular response, I suppose, but it is based on my personal experience. After a month of being warned that we could be robbed on the bus, the street, killed on the beach, etc., I ended my time there, held hostage by 2 escaped criminals. That's enough for me. I did not enjoy my stay in Morocco. We went during Ramadan and had rocks thrown at us and people following us down the street yelling at us. We also couldn't be seen eating by anyone or we would get the nastiest looks ever. No intention of ever going back. I personally have no intention of and don't really understand why other people go to countries that are so controlled and influenced by religion. They are, quite frankly, usually the most miserable places in the goddamn world. India. I'm sure some parts and people are lovely, but my wife got grabbed so much in front of me without any concern that it ruined it for us. India is another place I would definitely like to visit one day. Mostly because I frickin' love Indian food, but also because, it's a pretty goddamn beautiful place. Las Vegas. For me, very overrated. Hotels are very similar, expensive, same food in each hotel and casino, too hot in the day, so busy at night. TV has definitely glamorized it. What's the most messed up thing a friend has ever done to you? I used to chat to this guy online for over a year on Skype, 4 or 5 nights a week, anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a time. Definitely lots in common. Really sweet guy. I would have done this anyway, but I started crushing on him. I know he cared about me a lot too, but then one day about 2 years ago, he deleted his Facebook and stopped coming on to Skype or the original website we had met on. Not a word. Didn't answer any texts or emails. I continued to send him the odd text message, happy birthday, Xmas, etc. I finally heard back from them during this summer that he had been spending far too much time online and had to cut it out completely. Couldn't have told me this earlier? I was worried that he had been maybe in an accident or something because the silence was very unusual from this guy. I still care about him a lot, but I haven't really thought about him much recently. He was super awesome and we were on the same wavelength. I thought it was really cool that he understood what I was trying to say when I was having difficulty expressing myself and loved pop culture as much as I did. No doubt when an internet friend just disappears one day, it totally sucks, sure, but I think as I've gotten older, I'm kind of like, yeah, people have their own lives, priorities, things change, and granted, yes, they could have totally told you that they were just getting off the internet, but at the end of the day, some people need to make drastic changes in order to actualize real change. One of my best friends, and one of the first people to be nice to me, said he loved me. Then he spent a whole lot of time with me. I thought things were going great. I started to feel the same. He asked if we could take it further. I was a virgin at the time and very self-conscious about my body. Well, after maybe an hour of him cuddling and such, we do the deed. After that, he made me dinner. It all seemed like a really good thing. Next day, he completely ignores me. It took me about 3 months to get him to even text me back, and the only reason he did was because he wanted his best friend's advice on how to get a girl that he wanted to smash. I helped, and I really have no idea why. It hurts to see them together, and he makes eye contact with me while he hugs and kisses her. Then, whenever we're alone, he tells me how beautiful I am, how special I am. But as soon as someone else walks into the room, he makes fun of me, and it hurts. I told him that, and he called me terrible things. I haven't talked to him for almost 2 months. I'd like to put this more tactfully, but your best friend is a user of literally the worst possible degree. One of my best friends borrowed $3,000 from me. I was a single mom going through cancer treatments. He took the money and never paid me back. He told me he loved me and he wanted to elope. When I said no, he was crazy and I want my money. He told me he wished cancer could destroy my body and I died. We dated in 6th grade. I was so completely in love with him up until he never paid me back. He used my crush to his advantage. Oh, let's not forget, he had my mom arrested 3 times in a week when I was in 8th grade, then told the entire school about my personal life, but my mom kinda deserved to get arrested. Needless to say, after 17 years of friendship, I could care less about him. In 6th grade, I had this friend, let's call him Brad. We met in block class and started to hang out at lunch and play Halo 3 on Xbox Live every day after school. Brad was the kind of kid who would call you gay if you didn't like something he liked, or did something he thought was stupid. I don't know why, but he always focused on me for that sort of stuff. So fast forward towards the end of 6th grade in our PE class, we were all waiting in the locker room to get dismissed into the gym for class, when one of our friends started to have people sign the back of his PE shirt. Since it was the end of the year and we didn't get our yearbooks yet, we all followed suit. I finally let Brad sign the back of my shirt since it was the back of my shirt. I couldn't see what he was writing. When everyone saw what he had written, Brad started to chant it throughout the locker room. 10 kin likes men, 10 kin likes men. I'm not gay, nor do I have any problem with gay people. I started to spin around in embarrassment, confusion, watching as everyone in the locker room pointed and laughed at me. Then out of nowhere, my friend Keenan grabs me and pulls me into the locker room office to tell our teacher, whom is a great guy and used to teach with my mom, what Brad did. Anyway, he had to call his mom and tell her what he had done. I don't know why, but I was still friends with him until the end of 7th grade. Then in 7th grade, we went on a field trip and my mom and Brad's mom both volunteered to help out. They ended up sitting next to each other on the bus and my mom had brought up what Brad did to me. I overheard Brad's mom explain that when he called her into the office, he was crying uncontrollably. It must have been so awkward for the mother of the kid who practically gay bashed me to sit next to and explain to my mother what her son did. The worst thing I can think of is one friend that stands me up about 40% of the time. It's weird. When I see him, he's a really good friend. But when we make plans to hang out on a certain day, I'll call but won't hear from him for days. When I finally reach him, he'll say something like, "Oh, I had to go to something with my brother, etc. Not sure what to do." I legitimately don't think I'd be able to tolerate that. I would be like insisting to them, "Hey, if you got something else going on, I don't mind. You just gotta tell me so that I don't get my hopes up that I'm gonna have a nice day out with my friend and then bubkiss." The only solution I'd see is to confront them about the fact that they clearly don't respect your time. I had a friend at university who was always looking for bits of money or to buy him food as he was starving, etc. I even listened to his stories of how he'd make the best video game ever when he graduated, showing me page after page of designs he had done, all looking straight copies of other games. Me being a regular good guy Greg felt sorry for him, so coughed up cash that I was working my butt off for whilst I was studying as well, all while he'd lay about doing bugger all. I thought he was just a bit odd, but in time he'd mature, mellow out. I was quite wrong. Come the group work, he stole the rest's work, tried to pass it off as his own, claimed we were just all jealous, etc., and how he'd done all the work. In reality, none. That, and he never paid me back a penny of the cash I loaned him. Thankfully, he crashed and burned and I believed effed off on some trip to try and discover himself. Back in middle school, a friend spilled water on my crotch area of my pants. I was wearing khaki pants and it was in school, so it was pretty visible. Instead of helping me by fetching me some paper towels, my friend started laughing his butt off pointing at my crotch, getting enough attention for everybody in the class around there to stare and laugh at me. I got really embarrassed, and now I realize that the biggest mistake on my part was not playing it cool. I haven't spoken to that friend since. Not only do I agree you should have played it cool, but also, this is definitely on the lower tier of things that a friend could have done to you. I lived with a girl who was my roommate in Jobs Corps. If you don't know what that is, Google it. I don't feel like explaining. After we left there, she had a 2-bedroom apartment and the rent was cheap, so I moved in with her. Being that we had been roommates before and I knew she was cool, I didn't think we'd have problems. Wrong. After 2 weeks, I had a full-time job and was contributing to food and bills, not to mention alcohol. She and her boyfriend drank a lot. No one complained about anything I did. I never left a mess, never locked them out or anything of the sort, so I don't think I was doing anything wrong. About 2 weeks after I started working, things go weird. I had become friends with some of her friends, including her brother. Somehow, she decided to tell them I had every STD possible. Not true, and that I slept with any guy who hit on me. Also not true. Said friend and the guy I was interested in never spoke to me again. I didn't find out why until way later, but I noticed at the time that they all just started ignoring me. She started locking me out of the house while she was home, throwing the deadbolt and the chain on. I knew she was home because I could frickin' hear her giggling at my frustration. I'd be asking her nicely to open the door, at least let me get some clothes for the night if she wanted some alone time with her boyfriend, and she would either ignore me or yell rude things back through the door. After this started, I couldn't be in the house without feeling uncomfortable. Constant passive-aggressive behavior. Her and her boyfriend sitting on the couch mumbling things about me loud enough so that I could hear it when in the kitchen. Her boyfriend even threatened me repeatedly, which I ignored. He was all talk and I knew it. Blah, blah, blah. The final straw came when I tried to get into the apartment to pick up the majority of my belongings so that I could move into a new place. I had to let her know I was moving, had paid up rent and bills. She seemed fine with the arrangement. She refused to let me in again and threw a bag out into the alleyway with some of my clothes in it and told me never to come back or she would call the cops. Come to find out later, she just stole anything she wanted from my room, bagged up some clothes for me, and then threw everything else out. Everything she threw out included my birth certificate, childhood pictures, yearbooks, journals. Oh, and she read the journals out loud to people who knew me and made fun of me the whole time. So basically, I was left with a few changes of clothes and whatever I was carrying in my giant purse of doom. Thankfully, after years of a nomadic lifestyle, I was accustomed to carrying a mini kit of bathroom items and all my makeup in my purse. I was left in a town where I knew only my co-workers and had only known them a few weeks and had virtually no money and no possessions. Some of the things she threw out were pictures of my now deceased grandmother and me when I was a baby, and it breaks my heart that I don't have them anymore. It might not seem that severe, but as a clueless 20-year-old, this seemed like the most awful betrayal ever, especially because I hadn't provoked her at all and definitely did not deserve that. She contacted me years later to apologize, and I did forgive her. I blame her now ex-boyfriend who always hated me, but I would never trust her again. We're just Facebook friends and occasionally chat on Instant Messenger. I will never forget that. I'd like to say this is why I don't live with people that I don't know that well, but you literally knew this person and then they decided to do a 180, a massive heel turn, and decide to be the villain of this period of your life, I guess. God damn, what a psycho. I wouldn't even forgive them. I wouldn't associate with them. My friend Rod had sea monkeys that he'd kept alive until they were the size of small tadpoles. He took very good care of them and he was invested in their survival, if not a little attached. I was high and clumsy and knocked it off the dresser. You could see them flitting about on the wall and in the carpet. They all died. I felt like crap. I am the sea monkey Himmler. Sorry, Rod. I had this one friend I knew through middle school to college. One weekend, a lot of my group of friends were going to a convention, so my sister got a hotel room and asked if I had any friends who would like to stay with us for the weekend and pay a small fee. It was one of my sister's friends and a couple of my friends, her included, who took us up on the offer. Everyone else paid up front, but she insisted that she had to get to an ATM to pay. The whole weekend, she basically avoided us and would hang around these two guys she dubbed Boyfriend 1 and Boyfriend 2. That Saturday night, when we were all going back to the hotel together, she decided to run off with some guy with a motorcycle, insisting she's grown. She was 18 at the time, so she wasn't technically wrong, but she sure as hell wasn't acting it, i.e. the not paying what she owed and going off with someone she had met maybe 5 minutes before, and that she'd meet us at the hotel. She ended up knocking on the door an hour and a half later, wanting to get in, waking us all up. Anywho, the next morning, her and my friend go to Waffle House and wanted to spend more money at the convention. She only had to pay us $60, which should have been a priority anyway, but decided buying more junk at the convention was more important. She paid us half of what she owed, which I later found out a large portion of that money came from my other friend, high school students. Now, would someone who's grown be asking for money from high school students? Her bag didn't even pay for her Waffle House. This girl still tries to talk to me and can't take a damn hint. First year of college, my best friend was this kid who lived in my building. We'd play video games, watch Pokemon, get high together, etc. One night, while drunk, I cried in his arms and told him I wanted to delete myself. He was supportive and encouraged me to seek help for my depression, which is something I have been struggling with since the age of 9. A few months after this incident, I have begun therapy and I'm feeling good and strong. I started dating a girl who also lives in my building. My best friend begins dating her best friend. It's kind of the perfect scenario. 1 month later, my best friend's girlfriend dumps his butt. No explanation really, just wants nothing to do with him. My girlfriend and I spend a lot of time with him, trying to help him get over her. It's a slow process, but eventually he appears to be doing well. A month or two after this, I become massively depressed again about things going on at home between my parents and our financial situation. When it seems like therapy isn't helping and like I'm consistently making my girlfriend's life terrible by pulling away emotionally, I begin to feel a mixture of guilt and resentment for her inability to be more supportive and less bitter towards me, so I break up with my girlfriend. We're apart for a week, and during this week, I am spending pretty much all of my time with my best friend, telling him about how awful I feel not being with my girlfriend and asking him to tell her I love her. On the 6th day, my therapist helps me see that I don't have the right to make decisions for people about what they're willing to or should have to take. I tell her I still want to be with her and we get back together. Rumors start flying about things that went on between my best friend and my girlfriend during the breakup week, and a few people congratulate me on being a big person for not causing drama after their hookups. I confront the two of them, and they both firmly deny that anything of the sort happened. I believe them. We make the arrangements to live together and with our 5 other friends in a different building on campus for the following school year, and put all of our shared things in storage for the summer. The current school year ends and my girlfriend and best friend leave for the summer. The day my girlfriend leaves, she calls me from the airport and confesses that while we were broken up, she and my best friend got wasted and they hooked up. I tell her I'm not mad about the hookup itself because we were broken up, but I tell her I'm really mad about being lied to and walking around while people felt sorry for me and thought me a fool for trusting people who were apparently lying to me. I tell her all this and hang up on her, then call my best friend and rip him a new one for being dishonest with me. Then my girlfriend calls me back and tells me that the SX wasn't consensual. They were drunk and he forced himself on her. She tells me about how the next day and for the next 4 days they'd go on drives where he would tell her I didn't deserve her and she should just be with him and she'd really know true happiness and love. After a week of him dodging my calls and attempts to contact him on the internet, I leave him a voicemail telling him that if he contacts her again, I'll end him. She and I change our housing situation so that we aren't anywhere near him. The next school year begins and I meet up with him to get my things out of the storage unit. He calls me at midnight and tells me he brought all my things in his car and needs to leave, so I need to grab it all pronto. I arrive and find that one of my guitars is broken. At this point, I know if I argue about this, I'll never get home, and odds are he won't pay for the damn thing anyway, so I just leave. For the following 5 months, my girlfriend has nightmares multiple times a week about him. Sometimes in the dark, she hits me in the dark at night because she thinks I'm him. During intimate moments, she'd sometimes have to stop because she couldn't stop thinking about him touching her. It's clear this is really hurting her and our relationship, so I ask her to please go to therapy and at least attempt to create some divide between him and me so that we can get over it together. She never does. Eventually, it becomes too much and we break up for good. Now, they're dating and live together. As far as I know, she never went to therapy or anything of the sort. I did not see that twist at the end coming, not gonna lie. Oh man, I would be, I don't know, I think that'd be a sore spot. I had a very close group of girlfriends who all went to school together and know everything about each other. I was at our monthly girls' night where we drink wine, smoke, gossip, and whatever. I left around midnight to take another girl back home. I realized after dropping her off that I still had half a bottle of wine left there, so I decided to go back. When I got to the house, I could hear that they were out smoking on the porch, so I went around the back. Before I could open the gate, I could hear that they were talking about me. Imagine the closest friends in your life bringing up every flaw in your character and basically talking about what a crappy human you are. I was frozen and ended up sitting in the grass listening to them talk crap about my husband and I for over an hour. So my best friend and I went to LA from Austin just for the hell of it. So the last day there, after we had packed up and everything, we went out to a concert, his choosing, not mine. While we were there, he bumped into his ex-girlfriend, which used him and cheated on him for about 8 months before anyone told him about it. Even I didn't know. I never really met her nor talked to her. I helped him get over her by talking to him and all this other good stuff like a friend should. So anyways, he offers to go buy her a drink and I decide to go to the restroom because I'm not a fan of drinking. There was a line and the wait was like 15 minutes easy. Once I get out, I look for him and the girl for about 30 minutes, calling his phone, asking where he was, but it kept on going straight to voicemail. So after an hour or so, I get worried because I think he left me. My phone eventually runs out of battery and I ask someone if I can use their phone because mine is dead and I can't find my friend. So the people were nice and they let me use it, tried to call him 3 times and still no answer. The people eventually just say, leave him, blah, blah, blah. I explained to them we're coming from Austin and he was the one who had the car and pretty much all of my stuff was in that car. All I had at the time was my license, about $50 and a debit card, but I had just paid my tuition so my money was pretty much gone in that card. I don't know why, but they offered to let me stay in their house and one of of them laughed and said he might think we're murderers, and they got me a room at a hotel. I thanked them and all that good stuff, and I got one of their names so that I can repay them. I ended up calling my parents and asking them to put money into my card so I can get a car and drive back. So it turns out that my friend and the girl decided to hook up, have sex, etc., and leave me. I really don't know why, nor do I care anymore, but it just frickin' blew my mind that he would do that over a girl. Again, this is completely unforgivable. Why would you desert your friend in a place that they are not familiar with over some goddamn vagoo? My best friend of almost 15 years had an affair with my wife. Not only were we great friends, but I helped him get his first IT job. He was having no luck due to a lack of references. I offered him my home when he was homeless for over a month. Horrible decision in hindsight. My wife was just as much at fault, but his betrayal was unexcusable. I ran into him a little over a year ago in a bookstore. I caught eye of him approaching me. Before he could say anything, I told him, "Walk the F away." He did. That's the last I ever saw of him. I hear he moved up north. Our circles of friends all annexed themselves from him. He really had nobody left or reason to stay in our city. It was a crappy time in my life, but life throws those curveballs once in a while. You have the choice to learn from your mistakes or let it tear you down. I'd like to think it made me a better person in the end. Can't really hold him totally accountable for this one, but my best friend from high school got into some pretty heavy substance abuse in our senior year and then on into his freshman year of college. One night, I got a call from him where in his ridiculous state, he thought it would be funny to describe to me how he was going to intentionally delete himself by ODing on an insane combination of substances. Can't remember what exactly, but it was basically a recipe for a heart attack. Couldn't convince him not to do it. After that, he got counseling, but he's never really been the same person since, and we've more or less stopped talking entirely. It's sad when people get to that state when they're that down about their life or whatever's going on, but I think it's also sad to put people that care about you through that kind of turmoil in telling them that you're going to do something like self-delete yourself rather than speak to your friends and family about it in a healthy way. Tell them you're in a dark place. Tell them that you're having those thoughts and, hopefully they can come to understand and give you the help that you need. What is something that someone said to you that is so stupid you thought they were joking? We were watching the ID channel about a couple of murderers that were executed during the reenactment scenes. Dude next to me says, "That's cool that they let them out of prison to film this." My shift lead at the microbiology lab I work at told me that they believed that dinosaurs didn't ever exist, that they were mythical beasts like unicorns, and it'd be cool if they were ever real, but they weren't, so it's not. She also said that all fossils found are fakes to just get publicity. A girl told me she had to delete some photos off her phone because her phone was feeling too heavy. Same girl thought potatoes grew on trees. That can't be true. If I met someone who said that, I would lose faith in just about everything. Lots of questions from customers in the rafting industry. At what elevation do deer turn to elk? Who puts the rocks in the river? Where are the tracks that lead the boat? As if the Whitewater River trip is at Disneyland and the whole thing is a ride. At the put-in, can't I just leave my things here so they'll be here when we get out? Tons of people think you take out on a river at the same place you pull it. Like it's a circle and the current goes back uphill. School I worked at had a long-term sub in the 8th grade because nobody wanted the position. One day in the lounge I mentioned how one of her students was really annoying. I'm the art teacher. And she goes, "Ugh, that little mentally deficient prick is so annoying. He's trying to learn German too." I didn't respond because she just called a student mentally deficient and also trying to understand why him trying to learn German made him mentally deficient. Then she goes, "Here's what I want to know. German and Japanese, is there a difference?" I stared at her for a while thinking she was making a joke, but she kept waiting for an answer. When I explained German came from Germany and Japanese from Japan, she goes, "Ugh, I don't even get it." That person probably didn't get a lot of things. Every time we used to visit a beach near my grandmother's house in Barbados, my mother used to remind us of a young woman who came up to her and asked her what state she was in because her boyfriend was playing a practical joke on her and telling her they were outside of America, and everyone knows there's nowhere outside of America. America. I don't want to say all Americans think this, but there does seem to be a trend of Americans thinking that it's sort of the center of the world, and maybe who can blame them? I mean, so much stuff comes from America. I mean, a lot of TV and whatnot. When I was a little kid, I kind of thought I lived in America for a very short period of time because of all the American TV that I was watching, so I just presumed where I live equated to what TV was on. I was very young and super stupid. When someone mentioned that 1 in 3 people get cancer in their lifetime, another friend in the group said that the statistic is crap and that he sees it as 50-50, either you get it or you don't. This dude was studying architecture. Wonder if he thinks the odds of any building falling apart is 50-50 too. That's weirdly something that's been on my mind lately, because I have been wondering, what if I get cancer when I'm older? Will I survive it? Will I be one of the lucky ones? I once had a conversation with a coworker who told me that they wished they lived back in medieval times because it would have been fun to battle orcs and dragons. This was right when Lord of the Rings was coming out in movie form and were very popular. At first, I assumed he was saying he would like to live in the Lord of the Rings universe. After a minute, I had a sudden realization. I came to realize he meant that he thought dragons and orcs and things like that really existed at one time. I, and several of our co-workers, spent the rest of the day and months after trying to convince him that that wasn't the case. He strongly believed that during the dinosaur age, there were also dragons, orcs, trolls, etc., and we were fighting them with swords and knights. And you had to go and crush his naive little idea of how the world was. God damn it, why'd you do it to him? Not me, but a friend. She's from the Philippines, and she legitimately got asked if she lived in the trees when she was there. Okay, this got me wondering if maybe there was a reason they asked that sort of question, because it's like, why would you just ask specifically, oh, you're from the Philippines, so you must live in tree houses or something? So I looked it up. There are some really impressive looking tree house resort type locations that you can stay at there, but I don't know if there's like, I thought maybe he might have seen a documentary where it's like, in this village everyone lives in a tree house. But as far as I can tell, that is not the case. One night after volleyball, we were hanging out at the bars. A mutual friend walks by at a pivotal moment in the conversation. My buddy asks him, "Hey guy, how long does a pregnancy last?" He shrugs, says, I don't know, 18 months. We got a good giggle out of it, and then I just died after finding out he was serious. We are 30 years old. That might not be the case for humans, but Asian elephants do in fact take 18 to 22 months, I believe. Ladies, I'm sure we can both agree 9 months is a long time to carry a small life inside of you, but imagine doing that for nearly 2 years. Holy crap. I worked in an open kitchen at the time. The boss told us we needed to wash our gloves, disposable latex, because he was having to buy too many. I presume you're working for a crustacean that owns a successful restaurant under the sea? A truck driver complained to me about the government wasting our money on infrastructure. A pregnant girl at work just sort of put it out there that her baby got its nourishment through her belly button. Like, as in, she believes that somehow her child is getting fed through her own belly button, not the baby is getting nourishment through the umbilical cord and what would become its own belly button. Another girl was walking by us at the time and literally stopped mid-step, shook her head, and then kept walking. Oh man, not nearly as bad, but it reminded me how a few months ago I was out with a friend and I got a very simple math equation wrong when I was working something out, and this old lady stopped, looked at me and went, "You can't be bloody serious." And I turned to her and I said, "You stay out of this, you," because you know when you have those moments where you're just a second behind. You know you're wrong, you know you got something wrong immediately, you're about to correct yourself midway, but no one will let you live it down. Until I was a month shy of 22, I thought the 7 C's were actually the 7 C's. Continents. We got our tests back and this kid turns to me and asks, "Does F stand for family?" A piece of my soul died that day. This was 8th grade. There was a dude in my chemistry class who apparently didn't believe in the atomic theory of matter. He claimed no one could see atoms, so there was no reason to believe they existed. The professor just told him that he still had to learn it or he would fail the class. Also, a girl in my circle of friends said evolution was impossible because a few thousand years wasn't enough time for all that. I only realized she was serious when she got really mad at me for laughing at her. I was talking to a coworker about global warming and how eventually polar bears could be extinct. He said, "What's a polar bear?" I said, What do you mean?" He then said, well, a polar bear is nothing but a white-colored bear, so they'll just leave the Arctic and live in the forest. I thought he was joking, but no, he wasn't. I mean, worst case scenario, if all the polar ice caps just completely melted, we're in flooded Earth right now or something like that, and there was some kind of rescue attempt to keep some polar bears alive in captivity or in preservations and stuff like that, and there was legitimately no place with that much ice or snow to put them, then yeah, they probably would dump them in a snowy forest or something like that in Canada, and then they probably eventually evolve and acclimate to that environment over time. So I guess technically he's not wrong in the case of a apocalyptic scenario. I'm not thinking too hard about this though. My sister and I were at my dad's house for his birthday dinner. My sister had brought her kids, my 4-year-old niece and 2-month-old twin boys. My sister was exhausted. She had hardly slept in the last 2 months, and coming to dinner was the first time out of the house in a while. She looked like crap, but was happy to be there with lots of family to take care of the kids for a couple of hours. My step monster, who has never had kids, asks her, "Are you tired?" She replies, yeah, the pregnancy was hard. I had complications from the C-section. They're not good sleepers or eaters. I'm always breastfeeding one of them. It's been a very hard couple of months. I'm always taking care of one of them. Step monster replies, "Oh, that is hard. It sounds like when our dog was a puppy and we were kennel training her." Everyone turned to look at her, mouths agape, including my dad. She wasn't kidding. My sister looks up and says, "Yep, it's exactly like that." I'm not going to say that raising a dog is like raising a baby, but when my dog was a puppy, she was a major handful. I'm telling you, it was so bad at one point that we briefly had the thought of, did we make a mistake on getting this dog? But over time, she got used to us, mellowed out, and she became a sweet little doggy wog. Bit of a diva, though. The spork is the devil's utensil, because it is the amalgamation of the masculine fork and the feminine spoon, and is trying to blur gender lines in society. That is some omega level conservative thinking right there. When I was a new teacher, one of the old timers was venting in the teacher's lounge. She said, "This would be a great job if it wasn't for the kids." I laughed, and she exploded at me, told me I was still too young to hate them. She said I would grow up myself in a few years. That was 26 years ago. Kids are still 100% the best part of the job. I can't imagine anyone staying in education that hates kids. What a sorry life. What a sorry thing to do. How sorry for the kids. My brother told me today that he's pulling out his 401k way early despite the heavy penalties to invest in the stock market. This is because Trump is the best president now, and unlike Obama, he's a businessman, so there's no way he can lose. This is his new retirement plan. I have no frame of reference of what is or isn't a good idea to do when it comes to stock market stuff. You know what? I'm gonna go to the library. I'm gonna read up on stock stuff and just see what I can learn from it. At work, I got a wet washcloth and squirted some dish soap on it to wash off a table. Coworker freaks out. "Oh my God, you're not going to wash the table with that, are you? People could get sick." What? Why? I say as I inspect a clean washcloth. "The soap! People will get the runs from the soap." The soap that's meant for cleaning eating utensils? If they chugged it, sure they would, but this amount will certainly not give anyone the screaming squits. No, I didn't say that. I stared at her completely dumbfounded that she was absolutely serious. My question would be, what has she been cleaning the utensils with this entire time? Not me, but someone I know. So he and his wife and their friends got to go to the Super Bowl last year maybe. They normally watch it live on TV. His wife says in the most serious straight face ever, "Where are the yellow lines that tell the scores and stats and stuff?" I was checking out some cars with a friend at a car dealership that my friend was potentially interested in buying. I was just tagging along, offering my opinion, but wasn't interested in buying one myself. At one point, the car dealership employee who was talking to my friend starts asking me questions like, "Would you be interested in buying a car too? Have you owned a car before?" etc. Long story short, I tell him that I used to own a Renault car when I was living in Europe, but Renault is a company that doesn't sell cars in the US as far as I know. The employee responded by saying that European cars are not available in the US because they don't have seatbelts or airbags. Oh my God, I didn't realize I was riding around in death traps my entire life. I used to work at a popular fast casual soup sandwich restaurant. A woman asked my friend and I if there was cheese in the broccoli and cheddar soup. We laughed in her her face. Turns out that's not how you're supposed to handle that situation. Is that a silly question to ask? Yes. Have I also asked silly questions in the past before because I'm absent-minded and a little silly-billy sometimes? Yes. Maybe she was just having a brain fart moment, but still, yeah, it's a silly question. My mom thought that anteaters and sloths are the same animal, just with different names. It is one of those things that as someone who absolutely adores animals and loves animal trivia and whatnot, knows a lot about different animals, not everyone else does. Spanish class in middle school. Kid asks the teacher, "What's the Spanish word for tortilla?" She just looked at him stunned. I think I was in college at the time and in biology class when they went over some human anatomy, particularly the human reproductive system. Now, I learned a lot of the basics back in middle/high school and didn't think much of it when they were talking about the female organs, but the girl next to me was seriously surprised when the professor mentioned that there was a separate pee hole as well as a separate SX hole. I remember she looked at me with the widest eyes and said, "They're different holes? Were you there?" Honestly thought she was messing with me. We were in class and we began talking about the Black Death, the bubonic plague, and I said that the bubonic plague was probably the deadliest disease outbreak in history, seeing as it wiped out a third of humanity. And this super duper level 3 Christian girl asked me how I knew if it happened in the Dark Ages. I said that even though it happened a long time ago, that those cities were able to record what happened. The mortality rates and its effects throughout Europe, no one has ever wondered if the Black Death happened. We know it did. She said, "But you can't really know if it happened or not. I mean, were you there?" She seriously didn't believe that the Black Death ever happened. This female dog said that stupid line all the frickin' time. It was her go-to excuse when she said that the Bible was the oldest written set of laws, and I said that the Code of Hammurabi is well known to predate it and that there were at least 2 other sets of rules created by the Sumerians that predate the Code of Hammurabi. She said that the Code of Hammurabi didn't exist. I googled it and showed her that it was a well-known set of laws that have been written about in length. She said, "But that's just the internet. They can make stuff up easily. Can they prove it? Can you? Were you there?" She used this when it came to a lot of things, especially evolution. Were you there? Just because something doesn't fit your stupid agenda doesn't mean it didn't happen. This sucked because she was honestly one of the most beautiful girls I've ever had the fortune of meeting. I had a friend in the class who was thinking of asking her out, and so was I when we first met her, and when she began to show the crazy, I remember that he and I made eye contact and moved our chairs away from her slightly, enough to show to the others that she was hot, but not worth it. My incredibly stupid stepmother, who's 65-ish, said, "How did they know what the dinosaurs were called back then?" in a very serious voice and facial expression while watching a documentary. We were playing a trivia game and a good friend of mine didn't know who Queen Elizabeth was. We told her it's the Queen of England. We tried United Kingdom. She had no idea what we were talking about. Now, if you live in some obscure place with no basic education, sure, but we live in the Netherlands, so it's less than 1 hour away by plane. Someone once told me that pigs are the closest living relative to humans. I started laughing and asked, "What about monkeys and apes?" They replied, "I better Google this, you're laughing really hard." I'm not playing devil's advocate or anything here because I know that's wrong, but they might have gotten that idea because apparently you can replace humans' organs with pig organs? I know there has been a successful transplant with a pig's kidney into a human. I don't want a house someone has already lived in. My sister, while we were talking about her buying a house and why she couldn't get one that was already in an established neighborhood and didn't cost as much since he couldn't really afford a house anyway but insisted on buying one. Was that run-on sentence exhausting to read? Because so was our conversation. I had arrived 20 minutes before the start of my shift at a new job, so I decided to kill time in the break room and read a book. 2 minutes to go. I put the book in my locker and headed down to the sales floor to punch in. My boss sees me and taps his watch. "You're late," he says with his usual smiling eyes. I chuckle in response as if to say, "Right." Late. It is precisely 9 a.m. "I'm docking your pay. Don't let it happen again." He fixes me with a stern look to make sure I know he's not joking. I look at the time clock. It says 9:01, a minute faster than my wristwatch. He's effing serious. I made minimum wage back then, so 1 minute literally equaled a few pennies. Yet he indeed took the time to subtract those pennies from my paycheck at the end of the month. When my shift was over at the end of the day, I still had a fair amount of stock on my cart left to shelf, which ordinarily I would have taken care of, but I strode past my boss and punched out, prompting him to say, "You haven't finished your work." Shrugging my shoulders at him, I replied, "Sorry, sir, it's 5:01. I'm late." Pettiness begets pettiness. It is simply the way of the world at this point. A roommate once asked me if London was in England or Europe. I just stared at her for a while before saying both. For about 1 minute, I had to convince a colleague that the reason a computer wouldn't turn on was not that I had fastened a zip tie around the power cords too tight, therefore cutting off the power like a water hose. In this case, it was something I said. Was in an AP psychology class and asked the teacher, "Do deaf people listen to music in Braille?" with a straight face. Teacher just stared and the class burst out laughing. I learned later on most of them thought I was just kidding because that's what I usually do. Except I was dead serious. It was me that said it. New relationship with a super nice lady. Romantic weekend getaway. She suggests an afternoon float down a nearby river in a canoe. I know from experience, canoeing is a serious test of relationship potential. My ex-wife and I couldn't even carry a canoe from the beach to the bay without getting into an argument. Anyhow, new relationship, super nice lady. I'm determined to be a great team player and competent man. I have plenty of experience on the water. This should be a cinch. Canoe livery guy drives us to the drop-off while he is taking the canoe off the trailer and telling us how long the float is and where the pickup point is. I'm looking at the river, the wide, slow-moving river, the extremely slow-moving river. Along with the fact that it is a blustery, windy day, I can't for the life of me tell which way the river flows. Some leaves are floating left, some leaves are floating right. I toss in a stick and it just floats around in a circle. I'm starting to sweat. I figure I have a 50-50 chance of guessing correctly, but if I guess wrong, it could end in a disaster. Having to ask is a total embarrassment. I'm hoping the livery guy makes some reference to direction, but no. I'm desperately hoping to see someone else float by, but no. I picture us paddling upstream for 2 hours and being lost on the river. Livery guy hands us our paddles and says, "So if there's nothing else, I'll see you in a couple hours. Have fun." I bite the bullet and decide that asking is the best way forward. Yeah, which way is downstream? Livery guy and super nice lady both laugh, thinking I'm joking. No, I'm serious. Livery guy stops laughing and just points. I'm sure he was thinking that was the most stupid thing he had ever heard. We paddled downriver a bit, and super nice lady says, "Boy, am I glad you asked. I thought downstream was the other way." Anxiety from asking something stupid is a totally real thing, but as I've gotten older, you just gotta bite the bullet and accept that it's better to be safe than sorry. A girl I dated some time ago used to think that pouring alcohol on a fire would put it out because her parents told her. Her parents also told her letting your phone battery die was good for it. Nickel-based batteries, yes, but I believe most batteries nowadays are made from lithium. I was talking about environmental issues with a girl I used to work with, and she wondered why everything wasn't powered by electricity. She pointed to a lamp plugged into a nearby wall. "Look, no pollution. None." She said, "People don't get this, and it's so simple." What did you find out about your spouse only after you got married? Before we got married, I loved how sarcastic she was. After we got married, I realized she wasn't sarcastic at all. Just mean. We're still happily married, though. Ain't that just the way it is? Perspective is a hell of a thing. That she leaves 1 second on the microwave every time because she doesn't want it to beep? That is assuredly undiagnosed autism right there. And low-key kinda cute. He hates grocery shopping. Like, would rather clean the toilet than pick up more than 2 things at the grocery store. It kind of works, though, because I hate cleaning the bathroom. Personally, I like going to the shops. I just like being sent off to do things outside. I would probably be very happy being a courier. 2 months after our wedding, just after we mailed all the thank you cards to our guests, she calmly suggested an idea about our honeymoon, which was another 2 months away. Let's go as friends. What she really meant was, let's get divorced. She genuinely believes her life is meant to be a tragedy, a belief that I couldn't help her shake off. We did manage to go on the honeymoon as a couple, but we filed for divorce within half a year. I hope she's okay. I'm having a blasty blast. That is probably unchecked bipolar disorder. I mean, like, seriously, I understand that maybe a marriage can go off pretty quickly, I suppose, but how the hell do you get married, presumably after knowing each other for at least a number of years and dating for that long too, and just suddenly go after 2 months, "Yeah, this isn't working"? I don't frickin' know. My wife can speak French. We were on vacation last February in Papiti, Tahiti, French Polynesia. My wife starts talking French to everyone talking French. We've been married 25 years! Oh, I think that'd be a thing where I'd be like, okay, what the hell else are you hiding from me? I thought I was the disorganized, messy one. I was not the disorganized, messy one. That 3/4 of the time he spends in the bathroom is spent on iPad time. For years, I thought he was struggling with digestive issues. Nope, just the Simpsons game. What are we talking here? Does he have some kind of super powerful iPad that can at least run a PS2 emulator and a game of Simpsons Hit and Run? Because yeah, I can understand why he spends 25 minutes in the bathroom on iPad time with that. Or is it that really stupid Simpsons clicker game or some crap, whatever the hell it is? God, I hate mobile games. The only game I actually have on my phone is frickin' Chrono Trigger, and yet I struggle to play that still because I like feedback when I'm doing stuff in a game. He thought the word subtle meant the opposite of what it means. All through dating in the first few years of marriage, 7 years, I just thought he was using it sarcastically. Also, he gets horizontal and vertical confused, as in he falls down on the bed after a long day and says, it's so nice to finally be vertical. He has a nice butt though, so it evens out. That twins run in her family, both sides, found out during an ultrasound when they said there are 2 babies in there. He's very much like a llama. Upset him at just the right time and he'll completely lose his appetite and refuse to eat for a while. I could never bring myself to upset this person. I think to ruin someone's appetite is truly a great offense. Like if someone upset me so badly that it ruined my appetite or just put me off my food, especially if it was something I was really looking forward to, I might throw hands. That he has more PTSD from his ex-wife than he does from combat deployments. I literally only discovered this the moment we were married, that he has a very romantic side. All the time we were together before, I probably would have said I would have liked a little more traditional romance, but I appreciated how straightforward and pragmatic he was about other things and thought I can't have it both ways. I could add that he is a theoretical physicist who works with engineers and he has the personality to match. He always said he thought marriage was essentially meaningless. Eventually, for external reasons, we decided to do it. I proposed to him, by the way, with a new watch. We threw together a cheap little ceremony in a few weeks to get it over with, as we both put it. He put on his suit, I put on my pretty dress. We had the officiant there that I found on Yelp 2 weeks before and got started. However, when it came time for the vows and the ring exchange, I suddenly found myself facing a very sentimental man who was clearly deeply in love with me and overjoyed to be marrying me. After that, the same man who took years to feel comfortable holding my hand in public for even 5 minutes was hugging and kissing me in front of everyone at every moment he could during the ceremony. Then he wanted to celebrate every week-iversary, then every month-iversary, with romantic dinners and having the same cake we had at our wedding. He starts celebrating at 12:01 a.m. on our anniversaries. He gazes lovingly at his wedding ring and always wants me to do the Wonder Twins thing with him by clicking our rings together. Who'da thunk it? That is legitimately so sweet, and I hope that this couple is together still and very, very, very happy. That Rice Krispie treats are his favorite baked good. He had never so much as mentioned them before to me. 2 years married and suddenly this bombshell out of the blue. But seriously, after we got married, I realized that he wasn't as calm as he seemed. He can actually get very anxious, like a normal human being, and if he doesn't do something active for a few days, work out, run, etc., he gets hyper like a 3-year-old on a sugar high, manic, can't sit still, loud singing. It's quite something to behold. That sounds like undiagnosed ADHD. I should know, I am diagnosed with ADHD. And now you know why I go on so many tangents. I just asked my wife this question and she told me it was the wart thing on the shaft of my pecker. I wasn't aware that I had a wart thing on my pecker, so I ran to the bathroom to check, only for her to arrive while I'm tugging away at the skin to laugh at me for being so gullible. Not gonna lie, she sounds like a keeper. My ex thought penguins were about 6 feet tall. After dating for 7 years and well establishing that I like to sleep in when I don't have plans, we got married. Suddenly, I don't know why, apparently, we had a bedtime. And in the morning, it was suddenly time for us to get up. Had to have a stern conversation with my morning person husband about that real quick. If there's stuff we have to do, yeah, sure. But if it's a lazy Sunday, leave me alone and go play video games alone. My reaction to that would probably be, duly noted, my darling. darling and acknowledged. That he supported his buddy's family financially while his buddy spent a year in federal prison, not England, as everyone else was told. My husband kept his buddy's employment open by doing his buddy's job as well as his own job during that year. Another one was that we were married about 3 years before I found out he had once given his cousin a stack of signed blank checks because she was a single mom and struggling to pay her bills. Your husband sounds both generous and also very, very loyal. My wife can make balloon animals, and I never knew it. One day we were sitting at home with the kids, and after I brought home the wrong type of balloons out of nowhere, she twists up a dog. Then a monkey. If I discovered this about my spouse, I would be bringing them balloons a lot. I would be like, darling, you sit down. Don't bother doing the dishes. Don't bother cooking even. I'll take care of all of it. If I discovered this about my spouse, it would just be like, darling, I will take care of all the chores. I need you to sit down and twist me up 200 monkey balloons. My grandpa told my grandma he was Italian. They got married while she was pregnant, and she had not met his family yet. When they did go to meet his parents, they were talking in Ojibwe, a Native American language, and she looked at him and said, "That is not Italian. What are they speaking?" And that's how my grandma found out that she was married to an Indian, not an Italian. He had never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in his life, and I found this out when we were married for more than 5 years. I made him his first PB&J when he was 30, and he was blown away by how good it was. Darling, you have given me so much in this life, a shoulder to cry on, a son, love, but most of all, that bangin' PB&J sandwich, baby. That he was married before. We've been married for over 10 years. I found out last week that the divorce from his first marriage was never filed, so my marriage to him is not valid. I found out my husband leaves everything open, so every drawer, door, cabinet, etc. that he opens will stay open. He also found out that I'm even clumsier than he thought, and on my way to close one cabinet or drawer, I will definitely hit my head on an open cabinet or trip over a drawer. Now, he only leaves a few cabinets open at a time. Progress. He's literally never cleaned a thing in his life. No idea how to vacuum, clean toilets, or a shower. It was interesting. He's much better now. My wife has a very strong opinion on natural foods, added sugars, preservatives, and organic growing methods. After we got married, I noticed that several staples of my diet were slowly being phased out. The other shoe didn't fully drop until we had kids, at which point everything was evaluated for content before purchase, and many things were just barred from being brought into the house. This isn't a bad thing. I'm healthier than I have ever been in my life, but she didn't show any of the signs of being this crunchy before we got married. Easy answer, my friend. You see, usually when someone exhibits signs of being a control freak early on in a relationship, it can be a major turnoff. But that is simply my humble opinion. My wife is a sleep talker. I'll go along and speak to her for a while, and she never remembers anything, 2 to 3 times a week. Once she was dreaming that a tornado was bearing down on the house, and she was trying to round up pets and children. She was crying and calling out, so I got up and grabbed the corner of the mattress and started lifting and shaking the hell out of the bed, saying, "It's here, it's on us!" She cried and screamed even harder, reaching around for the kids as she slowly came awake and realized what was going on. She threw a book at me and called me a butthole and went back to sleep. Can confirm, I'm a butthole, but damn, it was funny. How shockingly alike we are. We're going on year number 5 together and year number 2.5 married. She and I think so much alike that it's scary, to the point where we say the same things at the same time in the same exact way on a daily basis. If I didn't know for a fact that she wasn't my Earth 11 or Rule 63 counterpart, then I'd be worried. Not after marriage, but after moving in together. I would wake up early for work and tickle one of his feet. He would snatch it back under the cover quickly and then slowly push it back to its spot peeking out from under the blanket. I thought this was a cute game we played whenever I was leaving for work, and I did it every morning for almost 2 years. Then one day after I had moved in, I did it to him while he was awake, and he gave me a confused look and asked, "What are you doing?" I told him I was just trying to play our morning tickle game, and he had absolutely no clue what I was talking about. Turns out he's only ticklish when he's sleeping, and I was unknowingly playing a game alone for almost 2 years. She's right. That is cute. That her butt functions as a low-level foghorn on some mornings. That she was gay. This is significant because I am straight and assumed she was as well. Not after we got married, but after she got pregnant. She used to drown stray cats in a bucket. Yeah, I have custody of our kids now. Anyway, she was pretty normal acting for the most part until I personally think the hormone changes of pregnancy did something to her. She frickin' lost her mind. Living in a mother's state, there was not much I could do about it, unless she actually wanted to have a psyche evaluation. So I stayed with her to protect the kid, then kids, until one day she took the kids and ran off with her lover. Mother's state, still not so much I could do about this. About a year later, I get a call from CPS, essentially saying her and her lover had been torturing the girls ruthlessly and allowing illegal substance abusers to take advantage. She is a sociopath. Remember, kids, sociopaths know how to look and act acceptable, unless something happens. You seriously cannot spot one in the wild. Sometimes, only sometimes, I think we need to bring back asylums. This took a really dark turn. About to celebrate 2 months of marriage, so I'm still part of the newlywed club. My husband and I didn't live together until we got married, and I discovered his sleep talking, which happens almost every night. He's had a full conversation with me, thinking my name was Steve-O, yelled, "2 players now, who's going down?" But my personal favorite is when he rolled over and said, "I just know it's gonna be a happy Halloween soon." The extent to which she thinks farts are funny. She let on that they were humorous before we got married, but now I realize she thinks they're goddamn hilarious. A good fart can always put a smile on her face. I found out that my wife wanted to get fat and sleep with a variety of men and not have a job while I was off trying to support the family. She got dropped like a frickin' hot potato. The sad thing is you would be legitimately surprised how many women would actually like to live that lifestyle. And no, I'm not on my villain arc, I'm not a misogynist, people nowadays, more than any other time in history, just have a proclivity for being lazy and getting immediate pleasure and satisfaction, regardless of gender. Nothing. That's why it took us 7 years to get married. I told her I'm only doing this once, so we better be sure. Happy together since 2000. He has a really hairy taint, like a mustache, but he has relatively sparse body hair everywhere else. We tried to wax it once. Oh my God, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. After the whole Chris Brown, Rihanna story broke, she said, "I don't see what the big deal is. I'd slap you around too if you ever checked my cell phone." Oh my God. My husband is in an army and he usually gets up around 5:30 a.m. He likes to hit his snooze button 3 to 4 times before actually getting up. Yeah, I did not put up with that for long. My wife and I discovered horrifying things about each other because after we married, we shared the one car. I will drink a coffee that has been out all day. It's normal for me to put a giant jug of iced coffee in the car and then sip from it intermittently for many hours. My wife, it turns out, often feels congested. She'll discreetly hock a gigantic loogie into any discarded coffee cup nearby. I would drive the car in the morning, then we'd switch midday and she'd take it for the afternoon. Then I'd take it back in the evening. Twice I picked up my neglected coffee and took a long draw. The straw is blocked, needed lots of suction, then something icy and slimy slithered into my mouth. We have 2 cars now and I keep them both stocked with tissues at hand. Yeah, I think that'd be the wise choice. Oh God, Currently living together, engaged, but anything she does has a mess left. She cooks, the pots and pans stay on the stove, shower, always have her old clothes left in the bathroom, trying to find a specific shirt, you bet your butt there are clothes scattered across the floor. Other than that, everything's perfect. After 5 years of dating, I felt confident I knew everything about my wife. Wrong. That sick, disgusting, vile woman puts ketchup on her macaroni and cheese. Frickin' ketchup does not go on macaroni and cheese! It's nauseating just thinking about it. She's really anal about things and super type A, but is also as lazy as me, so it doesn't actually get done. Also, apparently, she missed the part of our long conversation about adoption when I very clearly stated that I didn't want to adopt babies because I don't like them, and they're in high demand and it's the kids that need us. She recently informed me if we're adopting, we're getting a baby. So that's been great. I was seriously surprised when she told me that evolution was interesting and it made sense, but since it went against her beliefs, she just didn't believe it. Adam and Eve made more sense. Oh, but premarital SX is okay. Hey, if she believes in God and Christianity and all that stuff that much, and yet she's all like whatever about premarital SX, that should be a compliment because she wanted you, boy. I was dating a girl for a while and was someone that I thought I was going to marry. She had a very peculiar view of Christianity. Premarital SX was okay, but she wouldn't go see Bruce Almighty with me because it was sacrilegious. That was like a top 10 weird conversation. What do you mean you can't go watch Bruce Almighty? Why? Okay, I guess. But what clinched it was when she said she didn't believe in dinosaurs. I didn't stick around to figure out that one. He hates kitchen cabinets that are left open. When I found that out, I'd open a few random ones up every day. It took him a while to catch on that I was doing it to annoy him. I'd wait until just before he got home to do it because it annoys me too. Every now and again, if I'm not going to be home when he gets there, I'll leave all the cabinets and drawers open just to let him know I was thinking about him. One day he's gonna go off the rail. His hatred for open drawers will reach the zenith and he will take it out on you. And when that day happens, I hope your legs don't fail you, lady. My sister found out 3 years into her relationship that her husband used to be an NFL wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. She thought he just played beer league football casually with his friends. They were sitting around watching a football game on TV, and he knew really specific details about certain players. She asked him how he knew all this, and he said he was pretty good friends with him. The conversation kept going, and he finally admitted to playing in the NFL with him. His family would never talk about it either. She would be over at his house, and his sister told her that his college games were pretty fun to go to. She never brought up that he was the star wide receiver playing in front of 70,000 people. That he has an infuriating habit of throwing things away that shouldn't be thrown away. He is an extremely clean person, and I love that about him, but he takes it overboard. For example, we will have half a tub of butter and see another tub at the store that's on sale for a decent price. So we will buy the butter that's on sale. Well, instead of using up the half tub of butter at home, he will just throw it away and open the new one. He does this not just with butter, but with every single food item you can think of. He also throws away things that in my opinion are very important, but in his opinion are causing clutter, which he gets super anxious about. He has thrown away a DVD collection, our lease, brand new clothes that myself or my kids haven't worn yet, and so in his mind never get worn, blankets, towels, shoes, etc. I try to set up a box for him to throw everything into instead of the garbage, so that way I can pull things out that I actually want and then donate the other things to charity. But that didn't last long. He literally threw the box away because it was in the way. Also learned when we got a dog that he is terrified to scold the dog for any reason or raise his voice around it, because he's convinced the dog won't like him if he does those things, and that thought is devastating to him. Unfortunately, my husband is probably the sweetest, kindest person you could ever hope to meet, so it makes it really hard to stay angry at him for any reason. That sounds annoying as heck. I don't know if I'd be able to put up with that, so good on you for being patient and trying to find solutions to that. But I remember my brother used to throw away spoons and everything whenever he'd have a yogurt, because he'd just leave the spoon in the empty yogurt pot, and then he'd take it downstairs and throw it away with the spoon and all. And because maybe we'd buy like 4 yogurts at a time or something like that for the whole household, it'd be like you wouldn't quite notice that they're going missing until a substantial amount had gone. Amusement park employees, what is your horror story? I used to work at the Dumbo tent in Magic Kingdom, where there was a playground packed with tons of kids all the time. One time, this little kid banged his head on a metal bar and started bleeding. However, this didn't stop him, so he just kept running. Then I noticed other kids were just running through the pool of blood that the hurt kid made. We had to shut down the tent for hours, and several kids had to be brought to the medical area to make sure they were okay. I was riding operator at Knott's Berry Farm from 1986 to 1988, and one hot July, we had a low water alert at the Timber Mountain log ride. Water is what slows down the log when it reaches the bottom of the runout, and I don't remember why we had low water, but the logs were coming down really quick and making the horseshoe turn at the end rather speedily. It was a high-capacity day, and despite having the low water warning, we were told to keep the ride running. I was working dispatch, and we had a guy at the point where the flume separates into two channels heading into the station, keeping an eye on the descending logs. Suddenly, he yells, "Shut off the lift!" and I do it without a single bit of hesitation. One of the logs had achieved so much speed that it had neglected to make the horseshoe turn, hopped the concrete flume wall, and was hung up, partially remaining in the flume. We were operating at maximum capacity that day, 22 logs, and the next log had just appeared at the apex of the drop. Had it not been for our point guy, that log would have continued down the drop, collided with the stranded log in the horseshoe turn, and that would have been seriously no bueno. I worked in a video arcade at an amusement park in the early 80s. Most awesome time ever to work in an arcade. We were shutting down for the night, and I went to the corner to turn out the lights. There was a passed out teenager sprawled out on the floor by a video game. He was out cold, and it took 4 guys to carry him to the security station. Who the heck pays to get into an amusement park while being absolutely off their face drunk? You're just asking for a puke-filled, never going to remember anything experience. I actually recently went to California, and my friend offered to take me to Knott's Berry Farm, and I know that was the previous story. I don't know why I didn't say it then, but I just kind of only now remembered, oh yeah, that's why Knott's Berry Farm sounds so familiar. Is it actually America's first theme park? The internet says it is, but I've become more and more apprehensive as time goes on about the information that I get off the internet. But that would have been really cool to visit America's first theme park, because I'm a big fan of roller coasters, rides, just theme parks in general, to be honest. But sadly, I couldn't dedicate the entire day to traveling to a theme park, going around all the rides, and then traveling back. I had people to meet and stuff to do. I used to work at Six Flags. There was a sugar daddy and sugar baby couple who decided to sneak into our locker and storage room during a big rush in order to have SX. We caught them when we realized the door was locked and got the keys to unlock it, and we smelled a heavy scent of SX and sweat, and saw a very dirty panty liner on the floor. Security was called, and they were escorted out of the park. You were right to do so. Theme parks are there for fun and rides exclusively. I mean, not that kind of fun and ride. You know what I mean. Working at an amusement park is a ride-up for the first and last time this summer. I work a floorless roller coaster, so naturally I get kicked by about every other guest whose seat I check. One day, I was checking seats as normal, and a teenage boy kicks off his gross, old navy flip-flops and asks if I can put them in the bin for him, as he forgot and he's already locked in. Sure, not a big deal, as I take shoes all the time. I come back to check his seat, and he nailed me hard in the shin with his uncut toenail. I knew it had broken the skin, but I didn't assume it was bleeding or anything. I check the rest of my seats and go back to my safe zone to clear the train, and there is blood dripping all down my leg. I had to be taken out of position to go deal with it because it was bleeding that bad. I've had some pretty bad stuff happen this summer, but this one was accompanied by a scar and a potential infection. I can beat this. I can beat this so easily. Okay, so when I was a kid, me and my brother were messing about in a paddling pool in the back garden, and I jumped at him because he kept on bugging me. So I was like, I'm gonna get my revenge on him. So he's reclining, relaxing in the pool, in the little paddling pool, just the blow up ones, and I leap at him, and he puts up his foot directly at my face, and his uncut toenail stabbed me in the eyelid. My eye's fine, but it was bleeding profusely, and I come running in to my mom, and her friend sat down in the kitchen, and they're like, oh my god, what happened to your eye? I'm pretty sure her friend literally was being sick or something. He couldn't look at me. And you can't really tell just by looking at it immediately, but I have a little scar that goes across the very top of my eyelid now. I no longer have the pleasure of working there, but I used to have a summer job at Kings Island, a big theme park in Ohio. If you aren't familiar with Kings Island, there is a 1/3 size replica of the Eiffel Tower smack in the middle of the park. That's where I worked. One day, I was sitting at the base of the tower when I hear this splashing sound off to my left, followed by the sound of disgusted preteens. Long story short, somebody couldn't handle the altitude at the top of the tower and projectile vomited off the side. Mind you, that vomit came crashing down on the party of adolescents from 315 feet up, so it had to be going pretty damn fast. fast. I quit not long after that, actually. I used to work on a log flume ride in a small UK seaside town, and there were a couple of regular things that kept happening. At the bottom of the log flume is a pool area where people get on and get off the logs. The water is only a few inches deep, but it is dyed dark blue to make it look deep, as regular clockwork drunks would dive in thinking they could swim across the pool. Once their faces had met the concrete bottom, they would stand up looking like a smurf that had been dragged through a windscreen. Just before the final big drop of the log flume, there were a couple of light beams that would detect if two logs were too close together to go down the drop. If they were too close, a big gate would come up and stop all the logs apart from the first one. We would then have to walk everyone down an emergency exit. Local kids worked this out and would put a bag over the light beam as their log went past. On one occasion, they did it while a load of physically and mentally disabled kids were on the ride. We needed the help of the fire brigade and the ambulance services that day. I ain't even gonna lie, right there I was only half concentrating on that story when reading because my bloody neighbor keeps fiddling with their frickin' fire alarm for some reason. You know what, saying for some reason is stupid. It's good to mess around with your fire alarm, but when it's been set off 15 times in the day, it's like, what's going on, man? Vomit in an unair-conditioned public bathroom urinal in the summer in the southern US. Then imagine what it smelled like after they applied the sawdust. I'll never forget that smell. My stomach hurts just thinking about it. And this was 20 years ago. But the real question is, buddy, what theme park do you work at? I was working at Disney World when the monorail collision happened and killed the pilot. While I wasn't at the platform, I had a roommate who was a monorail pilot, and things were a little odd for a few days after that. We were told to not answer any questions about it. The monorail was turned off between Epcot and MK for a few days. Tensions were high. People didn't feel safe, even though this happened in the AM and was a legitimate accident. Suffice it to say, the nose cones of the monorail are designed to crumple on impact. I wasn't there when it happened, but I work at a Dutch theme park. One day there was a malfunction in the roller coaster, just before it would have gone over the edge of the elevator. My coworkers climbed up. There is a set upstairs next to the elevator, told everybody on the train there was a malfunction and that they would be removing everybody from the train. The bracket that kept everybody in their seats were released. These are hydraulic and can be remotely released. And my coworkers started removing people, but they didn't think about what they were doing and started removing people at the back of the train. This moved the center of gravity of the train forwards, prompting it to go over the edge at some point. People were still on that train, holding on for dear life while the train sped up and went through a couple of loopings and corkscrews. Luckily, nobody got injured. That legitimately sounds like a nightmare I had once when I was a kid. Or like, I don't know, Final Destination. I worked at Six Flags Great Adventure as an operator for several years, worked on a bunch of rides. My first year, I reluctantly got trained on a family ride due to staffing issues. The premise of this ride is that it creates an illusion to make you feel like you're going upside down as you sit in a bench that moves back and forth. The bench is encased by a pentagon with various ceilings and floors to assist in the illusion. Anyway, I was setting up for the morning. The ride is controlled from a separate operator booth that can view the bench area through a camera. The operator that morning neglected to check the camera and started the ride as I was walking through the area, checking for cleaning. It took a solid 30 seconds of me screaming for the operator to stop to realize I was there. If I had been on for the full ride cycle, I likely would have been able to hold on to a restraint, but a wrong move and I could get stuck behind the bench and the wall. I don't know why, sometimes when I read these, it all sounds serious and then it turns out to all be a joke, and I was just imagining them going, if I was on there for the full ride cycle, I would have been a part of the illusion forever. It was a long time ago, but I once worked at an amusement park at this attraction. People often puked, but this one time was especially gross since around 10 people puked at the end of one ride. This, of course, needs to be cleaned, so we hosed it off. Usually this is enough to clean it off, but since there was so much puke and now water, we had to dry it using a trick that we used in the end of the days when cleaning it, which was spinning the ride to let the water exit through the side of the ride. When doing this after the park is closed was one thing, but this time the park was open. So before spinning it up, we kindly said in the speakers, please leave the queue area. We need to dry the ride. There will be contaminated water flying in the vicinity. No one moved. We tried 2 more times, but there were still loads of people. So we spun it up. The people fled as soon as they started to get covered in a warm mix of water and puke. We laughed our butts off while seeing bits and pieces bouncing on our windows. Poor people, though. I get it when you're in an amusement park and there's like an announcement or something. You're all taken aback by, the sights, the sounds, and maybe, the speaker announcements. You're like, unless I hear my name or something specifically, it probably doesn't refer to me. So you kind of tune it out. But, I would probably hear contaminated liquids hitting the area and I would be like, okay, I'm gonna move now. I worked at a theme park run by a certain mouse and worked at a boat ride. Was pregnant at the time and training. We had to put on waders, go into the water and practice how to evacuate guests off the boat in case we needed to do it. This ride goes down frequently. Evacuation happens all the time. Trainer told me if a guest fell into the water and their head went under, they would immediately have to be taken to get a tetanus shot. I wondered why the heck I was standing in that water pregnant. Didn't stay at that attraction for very long after that due to other reasons. I've got lots of stories about questionable practices by the managers, but I will never forget that experience. I wasn't a ride operator, but a games operator, working at Elitch Gardens in '97. There was an employee working in rides who died on the Sidewinder. For those who don't know, the Sidewinder is an old ride that was still fun. You sit in a 2-seat car, over the shoulder locking harness. You go forward in a straight line through the loop, then backwards the way you came. Well, the employee saw something, but she'd already given the motion to release the cars. She tried to reach for the object, but it was out of her reach. She slipped and fell to her death when the cars went. I was on my way in when it happened, but I plainly and clearly remember the aftermath. The ride was shut down for a while, and everyone was upset. The game I was assigned to was Fool the Guesser, and the station I held was one of the ones right near that ride. Games people in that zone were pretty plainly used as a distraction for a week and were told not to speak about what happened to anybody. Sidewinder was never fun for me after that. In the same year, in the same park, manager liked my ability on the guessing game, put me on a special game for a few hours, the one where you toss a ball into a bucket at an angle. This game is not rigged, but it is a cheap baseball, and the bucket is very hard to land the ball in. He tells me under no circumstances am I allowed to give out one of the really big stuffed animals. The ones at this location were exceptionally huge, German shepherd-looking dogs with colored bandanas on their necks. This man comes up with his wife and kid, says he must have one of those dogs. Manager is on lunch, won't answer his radio. I tell him I can't, but if he plays, we can go from the start. Guy lays out $700 and asks how many balls he can get for it. I do the math and just put all the balls I have in a bucket in front of him. I forget the exact pricing of the balls, but it was something like 16 buckets worth of balls. He starts playing and shoots pretty well. He's not angry, just focused. His wife and son and I start talking and he's having a good time. He gets the target amount of balls in about 3/4 of his money through, tells me to keep the rest. I get up on the ladder and get him his very hard-won, very expensive toy. 15 minutes later, manager comes by with 3 others and pulls me out of the game. I told you under no circumstances, but yet you ignored me. I said, I know, but look, and I pulled out $700 and laid it on his hands. He's just floored, speechless. Other 2 managers who I figured had come to suspend me or fire me instead do a hurried conversation, take me into the counting down room and show the manager. He nods, I'm not fired, but written up. I take it with a smile. For the hour I was in that game, I made $750 and was a little in awe of a guy who'd lay down 2 months' rent to be a hero for his 5-year-old kid. I really hate this manager's attitude. If he doesn't want to give the goddamn dogs away, don't have them on the goddamn prize shelf. I worked in the games division of my local theme park. Basically, you stand inside a sweltering hot booth for roughly 8 hours a day, screaming stuff about how great your prizes are into a mic set. I worked one of the more popular games during the Minions craze, and it was a nightmare. It was one of those water race games where you shoot a target with water and try to get to the top first. The only thing I had control over was pushing the on button once I turned on every player's gun. This is gonna be long, but let me take you on a journey. 1, people threw fits because they wanted their favorite minion, and even if it was the same minion in a different pose, it wasn't good enough. I had multiple people reject the same minion plush because it was waving. 2, when we would run out of the more popular popular prizes, people would become violent and attempt to tear down the display in a desperate attempt to get their favorite plush. All they had to do was come back in about 20 minutes and all the prizes would be brought over from the warehouse. 3. Being called a C-word in front of many very young children by an adult woman because she deliberately put herself on a broken gun despite me informing her that it wouldn't work. She demanded a refund. 4. 2 adults doing a protest march outside my booth because they lost and wanted a prize. 5. Being told by an adult man that he would kill and grape me for making him lose. He was in front of his child. Number 6. Getting cussed out by a mother because she tried to make her kid take a poo behind my booth and I asked her not to. The bathroom was 5 feet away. 7. Being stalked during the first week of my working there. Thank you, undercover security. Number 8. Had a man wait until the park closed, then follow me out through the employee exit. I didn't even know he was following me until security stopped me and told me to stay with them while he was escorted out. 9. Not my division, but I worked in the area where a health code inspector came for vacation and actively decided to write up one of our hot food places because it was a, and I quote, human rights violation. Servers actively passed out in the heat and the serving booth didn't have any windows or ventilation. 10. I worked there for 3 years. First week of the new season, I get a throat infection from yelling. Call in, go to the doctor. Doc tells me to get 3 days rest or I'll mess up my throat. Call work back. Tell them about my absence. Return to work. Provide doctor's note. A few days later, I get slapped with a warning for being unreliable. I refused to sign the documents because I provided a doctor's note and they knew about the absence. They return a few days later and say, you really shouldn't make trouble. It'll be a lot easier if you sign. I refuse to sign. They proceed to take my phone and lock me into my booth. I asked to call my mom and was denied. I asked to call my lawyer and was denied. I wasn't allowed to run my game. I wasn't allowed to use the bathroom. I ended up signing the paper, but in the comments section I wrote down the situation management hated me after that and did everything they could to get me fired. I quit a week later. And of course, the usual being called a poo bag or a scammer when people lost. The game was $3. Even though I worked full-time hours, I only got paid part-time pay. We were constantly understaffed, and when minimum wage went up, the park chose to fire people rather than increase pay. Screw you, Wonderland. I was MOD for a place with a very large trolley-type ride. Driver had epilepsy but didn't tell me. He had a seizure driving the thing, which was full of children on a field trip from daycare, some with special needs, several pregnant women and an older lady who broke her back so severely that she spent months in a specialized hospital in traction. I still have bad dreams about the sight of the trolley, half stuck in a lake, and the children sitting on the ground crying with the broken back woman screaming for help. I didn't know this was a remote possibility, or I'd never have put him in the driver's seat. And this is why if you lie on your job application for anything about a condition because you're worried about the way it will affect you, you are kind of a dirtbag. If you have a condition that will actually affect you in such an extreme way in specific jobs, you need to put that down. The worst I can think of was an employee that wandered into a restricted area in the morning while checking all the emergency stops and was basically decapitated by the train. No one knows why she was in there, and the bloodstain was still pretty visible as of a couple years ago. A guest who was also killed by a train because he jumped the fence to retrieve a lost hat. As for non-lethal, an employee jumped off the tracks onto the ground one day and completely busted both of his legs on impact. Also, while doing a safety ride on a smaller coaster in the morning, a giant metal hook was hanging down right at head level. Thankfully, I ducked in time and frantically motioned the crew not to load the guests as soon as I arrived back. On the same ride, also during a morning safety ride, a water ride above had broken and was pouring a waterfall above our track. Spent the whole day soaked. There are many more incidents at this park, but these occurred in the 5 years that I worked there. Oddly enough, still the funniest job I've ever had. Why was there a dangly metal hook at head height on a ride like that? I expect literally 0 sharp dangly hooks anywhere near any freaking roller coaster ride or anything at all times. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. What event changed your way of thinking permanently? My stepdad actually sitting with me and explaining why he was hurt and disappointed when I messed up. Happened in my early teens, and the look on his face is still burned in my mind. To clarify, growing up I had a lot of dysfunctional relatives who'd punish me and the other kids in the family, but never explain why or what we did wrong. Just immediate punishment. No questions. Nothing. The first couple of times I screwed up, stepdad actually made an effort to figure out why and sort out the reason I wasn't listening or was acting out. Nobody else had really ever done that. It immediately felt different, and suddenly I realized, yes, I'm a huge butthole for saying and doing whatever it was or not doing something, since there was no reason for it. The fact he had empathy and understanding was huge for me. We have an awesome relationship, and he's done more for me in the last 25 years than most other blood relatives did my entire life. Mwah, mwah, I love it. I love it when people are just, receptive to, treating them well. It's a shame not everyone acts that way when people try to treat them with empathy and kindness. Knew a kid who came from college during winter break to his hometown in Wisconsin. Went out for a walk on the coldest day of the year. Nothing unusual about the neighborhood. Upper middle class, spread out, big yards. His phone died and he knocked on his neighbor's doors because he was so cold and probably started suffering from hypothermia. He could have been disorientated and lost his way. He was only a few houses away from his house, literally passed out and died a few houses down, and was found the next day. No alcohol or drugs. Really good kid. Nothing strange. So sad. When my mom, 51, was diagnosed with brain cancer, and almost exactly a year later she passed away. This was in July of this year. I remember while she was sick, I just could not believe it was happening. Brain cancer was something I only heard about or saw in movies. It got to a point that it just felt like we were waiting for the day she was no longer with us. Watching my mom deteriorate that way is a pain I wish on no one. I'm 27, and before this, I just thought people get old and they die in their sleep, and that's how it goes. But now I have little to no hope in life. It seems so short and meaningless now. I'm scared every day, thinking at any moment it could happen to me or someone else I love. I got nothing to say about this except that is just something that we as human beings have to learn to cope with. Does it suck? 100%, but that is life. This is really small and totally first world, but I went to college and the school only had one ice machine that we all could use. Dorm kitchens didn't have ice machines in the fridges. I love ice, and I realize how much I took it for granted. I make sure I don't waste ice, and I eat or drink it all. Doesn't matter if you're first world, second world, or fifth world, girl. If you frickin' learn how to appreciate things and whatever, good. You should appreciate things. When I was 11, I went on a boat for my friend's birthday to go tubing with her. It was our turn after the other kids got done. We had fun, but we fell off the raft and we're laughing like crazy. Once the boat turned around to get us, I started climbing up the ladder when I heard a blood-curdling scream that still traumatizes me today. She had somehow slipped under the boat and cut her inner thigh so deep that it wasn't even bleeding. Her dad and I were the only ones helping her up the boat, even though 3 other kids were on. Once she got on, I had to tie a towel around her legs super tight while her dad called the ambulance and drove the boat to their dock. Once we were there, the ambulance had already arrived and I got off the boat feeling nauseous and all hearing just shut off. I threw up in her yard and went into her house while I heard her screaming in pain getting into the ambulance. I went to put my clothes back on in her restroom, and I remember staying in there for 15 minutes or more on the ground in shock, causing me to not be able to hear anything, and my vision was going black. I thought of the fact that if she was to go up the ladder first instead of me, I would have been the one in pain. That's when my way of thinking changed. I realized that I didn't have control over anything. Like, if you go outside in the dark and say nothing is going to happen to me, that is a false sense of security. Anything can happen at any moment and you would have no control over the situation. That false sense of security in me just shattered. I feared that fact and didn't want to go anywhere. I was only 11. I still lived 2 minutes away from the house it happened at. I learned to live with the fact I learned that night, but regardless, it still scares me senseless. No doubt, that is true. Anything can happen to you at any time, and you might feel anxious a lot or, paranoid, but you just have to be aware, Keep your eyes peeled and learn to manage your emotions as best you can. My nearly 3-year relationship ended because I am or was a liar. After telling my now ex-girlfriend a story about how I saw someone get shot, like the 5th time I had told her, something clicked in my head and I realized that while these stories were lies and I used them to entertain people to help emphasize points I was trying to make and that I was unintentionally manipulating her. I even teared up once telling her because I had told it so many times I was basically emotionally invested in the story. Once it clicked and I understood these were lies and they were destroying our relationship, I told her everything and broke down crying. We were on the phone. The realization only took a second, but it's like I had finally put on glasses for the first time and saw everything in a new light. She said she wanted to not talk for a week and that I should see a therapist, which I scheduled at the earliest appointment. She broke up with me via Zoom last December on the 8th, long distance for a few months with plans on me moving. As a kid, never having a strong male figure in my life, I turned to where most boys look to, which were my coaches, mostly all of them former military with various levels of PTSD, and I think part of my lying had to do with my ideas on what masculinity was, and that I was using these stories to try to emulate who they were and how manly they are, because at the time I wanted to be like them. It's still no excuse, though. I love this woman with every ounce of my soul, and over a year later I'm still beating myself up for hurting her, which is something I never planned on doing. I have continued therapy, which has helped immensely. Even aside from things related to this point, I am trying to move on, but I just can't seem to get her out of my head. Sometimes I even still buy things for her like she's still here. I have to remind myself that she chose to leave and not work things out, and I understand in part why she left, but I think what hurt the most is that I had planned on reaching the highest of highs and lowest of lows with her, and all I wanted was to grow together as a couple and work things out, and she didn't. Some lessons you can learn over time or in a single moment, and some lessons require you to be kicked in the teeth. Consider me toothless. Probably having a biology lab in high school as a hangout spot. The biology teacher had a soft spot for me since I was generally interested in science, so not only was it my hangout, I got to fiddle with the microscope, wash glassware, organize old science teaching material, and so on. The biology teacher was an older woman who was actually a hippie when she was younger and is a hardcore Democrat in a very Republican area. New perspective and the way she taught gave me glances at opinions I would never have considered in my upbringing. All of this led me to understand this. Nature is beautiful and complex in the most bizarre ways that we can hardly fathom. Nature has mastered these intricate designs, which humanity can hardly recreate them after generations of work, and that's frickin' incredible. When I decided not to live like my family, meaning I didn't start doing illegal substances, smoke, live in trashy houses, or drive crap cars, I kept a job, worked hard to advance in my career, make more money than everyone else in my family. I bought my own house and a new car every 4 to 5 years. I saved money and have nice things. The more I changed, the less contact they kept, unless they needed money. After I found out that money I was giving them for food was going towards smokes and booze, I started offering to buy them the food if they gave me a list. They all stopped talking when I stopped giving money. My niece ended up living with me for a while because she couldn't handle living in crappy conditions. She was being bullied and ended up getting raped. Her mom wouldn't move to put her in a different school because I don't see the need to move and disrupt the family for one person's issues. I picked her up that day so she could get better and be safe. She ended up spilling the beans. They purposely did not include me because I wasn't their type of people, and I chose to be too good for them. I have friends and my wife's family that has taken me in. They've included me in everything, tell me they love me every day, so I've learned that blood doesn't make you family. You'll know who your family is. It is really insane to me that some people don't want anything to do with you if you try and enrich yourself or make yourself better. Like, if you're fine with living a substandard and quite frankly immoral lifestyle, then go ahead, you do that, but don't drag your family and friends down with you, and then when they try to be better, try to be like, oh, I hate you or don't care for you anymore. Maybe instead you should look at the people trying to make themselves better and think to yourself, maybe I should try that. I never understood anorexia because food is amazing. I'm an overweight guy, quite blokey, always have been. Then, when I was 17, I broke my jaw. I couldn't eat solid food for 4 weeks. I got sick of those meal replacement milkshakes after a few days. Stopped drinking things like orange juice a day after that. Nothing but water from then. For 3 or 4 days, I got hungry, but I just ignored it. After 4 days, I stopped getting hungry. I felt lighter, I had more energy, I slept better, my concentration seemed better, and I had a lot more time. It was great. After about 4 weeks, I'd lost 2 stone, and it was time to start eating again. And I couldn't. And it was disgusting. Eating is when you add this warm, lumpy mush in your mouth, and you mush it about from some more as it cools down, and liquid comes out, which you swallow without noticing until you have to think about it all the time. Your senses are assaulted by these crazy waves of taste and smell. Spicy, sweet, bitter, salt, plus textures and temperatures. It's frickin' weird. It took me 3 months to get back to eating as normal, and I lost another stone. I was never diagnosed with anorexia or any other eating disorder, but I have so much more patience for anyone who is. You don't realize, but eating is just a habit. If you stop for even a little while, it's hard to start again. See, when you put all those words together and describe the act of eating, yes, it does sound disgusting, but shut the hell up, I love eating. Just recently, my uncle got told he has cancer that's spreading fast, and he said no to treatment, so he's being put on palliative care. My dad told me that he's simply a guy who doesn't complain, and it made me put things in perspective. When my uncle was 17, he was shot, in a coma for 3 to 6 months, was given his last rites 3 times and woke up to being told he'd had no use of his legs anymore. He went on to marry and his wife passed away after they had kids. In fact, I never met his wife, and even still, he wasn't someone to complain. Whether he was bottling things up or genuinely didn't see the point in complaining, I don't know. That really put things in perspective for me. This is after I lost my mum to cancer at 16. She fought it twice over the course of 3 years and didn't complain either. Being faced with your own mortality like that is something I can only imagine being terrifying, and yet she didn't say anything about it. Some people are just built differently, physically, emotionally, mentally. Went on my first date ever at age 24, after years of denying my sexuality altogether and assuming I was going to be alone for the rest of my life. I decided to give Tinder a try. I honestly thought I was going to scare him away at first glance. I was very insecure about my appearance. He was such a sweetheart. He asked me about my life, my family, my goals, my aspirations, my achievements, etc. He showered me with compliments on my smile, my smarts, etc. I realized then that I had never really appreciated those things about myself. I never expected a complete stranger to appreciate me more than I did myself. I realized in that moment that I deserved love just as much as everyone else, and from that moment forward, I began to love myself more and grew more confident. It also taught me to be more appreciative of others and look past things like appearance. That is a magnificent lesson to learn, and let it be known, people, that most others, unless they're, kind of mean and judgmental, I guess, which, yeah, sure, there are. I guess I'm not helping my point here, but other people are probably not nearly as critical of your physical appearance or the flaws that you see in yourself. About a year and a half ago, I accidentally sat on and crushed my kitten. I was trying to sit down to help my other kitten, and as I'm a big guy, I wanted to actually sit down on the floor. It felt like a shoe underneath me, so I sort of pushed it to get out of the way. Turns out that was one of my kittens. At the time, they were probably both 6 weeks old. He screamed and ran behind the couch. I grabbed him, still screaming, and took him to my bedroom to tell my girlfriend, who just got out of the shower. The little guy coughing up blood and my heart just sank. I was certain I killed him. My girlfriend rushed him to an emergency vet. I was working from home at the time, so I couldn't go. The emergency vet gave him pain meds and made him comfortable. I was a mess for 2 days until he came home. Every time I saw his brother waiting for him to return around the corner, I felt like pure crap. After 2 days, he came home and made a full recovery. I shattered 2 of his ribs and punctured his lung. I still haven't fully accepted what happened and blame myself to this day. Okay, now all I want to know is, what did this change your perspective on? Do you need to lose weight? Do you need to look before you sit? Because either one of those are perfectly good. Otherwise, I am immensely happy that the kitten recovered. This may seem like such a small thing, but when I was in junior year in high school, there was this popular guy in our choir class that was also one of our best football players. At the time, I was having pretty bad home life issues and was convinced most of the pretty girls just acted nice to my face and made fun of me elsewhere. Didn't have a very large circle of friends or anything, ignored by most of the student body, but one day for our spring final in choir, we had to get up in front of everyone and sing something of our choice. Well, this kid could play guitar pretty good. Went up there and started singing and strumming along to Hey There Delilah. He was really good, a little goofy, you know how teens are sometimes, but then he changes the lyrics for part of the chorus and goes, Hey there, blank, I love you, oh yes I do, and it caught me off guard so bad and everyone immediately starts cheering. The way he sung it, making sure to look me in the eye with this stupid little grin and a wink just made something in me break. He was so genuine in that moment. It wasn't staged, nobody put him up to it. He just wanted to make sure I knew someone really, truly cared about me. We never really talked before that, or really much after, but that one moment made me feel so special and so seen at a time when I desperately needed it. A few years after I graduated, I heard that he passed away from an undiagnosed heart condition. I think I still can't listen to that song without missing him. From that day forward, I really did start to trust people more. Our 10-year reunion is coming up, and I really hope his family comes. Many people in the world don't put any thought or consideration to how lonely some people can be a lot of the time, so you know what, this guy sounds like he was very much a class act. Rest in peace. Worked my butt off for a high-end developer in Los Angeles as an architect designer. Then my boss hired his friend's daughter. She got her own office. We found out how much she got paid. It was on the server. She got a Tesla and B's title. And when I realized I will not work overtime for anyone, or put in more effort than doing my job. It has worked out so far. I have a decent salary and never work overtime. Nothing big so far, but I've always been bad with mun-muns and spending. Can't say for the life of me, but my partner recently changed how I look at purchases for the better, simply by making me look at it like I worked X amount of hours for this, or this took me X hours to afford, and now some stuff just isn't worth impulse buying. Still not great with muns, but getting better. Oh man, the way this person writes reminds me of the oh whoa. My dad cheated on my mom most of their married life. At 13, I had to kick him out of the house because of it. I vowed then that I could never cheat on a partner of mine. See the hurt in my mom's eyes every time she found out. I could never do that to anyone I loved or even had feelings for. My father telling me that he loves me. I always thought he was ashamed of me. Turns out he was just worried about my choices and did not know how to communicate his emotions. My therapist led us through this conversation and it changed our relationship a lot. A person at work, pretty high position, father of 3 in his 40s, was killed on a train stop going to work in the morning. A guy with mental issues knifed him. Now, when I see someone acting strange or when I understand they are mentally ill, I move away, change a car in the train, or stay out generally. To be honest, I feel like there are more and more mentally ill people every frickin' day. Did anyone hear about Steve Buscemi getting punched in the street for no reason? Why would you punch Steve Buscemi? It's Steve frickin' Buscemi. He was a firefighter. He was a first responder in 9/11. I was an employee of a rent-to-own company and making an incredible amount of money for being good at collections. The event that got me was one Christmas Eve. A friend that worked with me was driving me home and we saw a customer that was about 3 months behind in their payment and would not talk to us on the phone and would hide in the house if ever we went to try to contact them. My friend said, let's follow them home because they will not recognize my truck. We get to the house right after they have gone inside, so we park and walk up to her door. We knock and they answer. After I remove all the groceries from their fridge and the food from the oven, we load them to the truck and went back to our store. Woke up the next morning and could not look myself in the mirror. I know it was my job and they were delinquent, but it just felt empty. I quit a week later. This is a complicated one in my opinion. They decided to actively avoid paying the dues that were owed for the service that was rendered, and then the consequences just caught up with them. I literally know a family currently who were booted out of a house in my neighborhood by the landlord so he could move his son in, and now that family live in an Airbnb because they have absolutely nowhere to go. They have 3 or 4 kids to look after and have been going place to place, and the Airbnb is now their latest spot. And yeah, it's awful. They pretty much did nothing to deserve that, while this situation is more yeah, you were supposed to do this, but you didn't, and you actively avoided doing it, so, the consequences have simply caught up to you. But the fact that it didn't sit well with the author is completely respectable. You need to have a certain kind of grit to do that sort of job. And it really doesn't help that it was on Christmas either. Like, you're literally doing the antithesis of what Christmas is about. My first wife's brother revealing his sister had been making me an unknowing cuckold even before we got married. Ew, that's rough, brother. That's rough. I've always had an appetite for risk, and that eventually led me to surround myself with people who love to live life on the edge. Led to a lot of crazy stories. During undergrad, me and a couple of friends climbed a rooftop of a 3-story building in our university. The rooftop was made out of glass. My friend stepped on the glass too hard and fell down 3 stories. He had brain damage and never looked or acted the same again. Lost some IQ points too. The kid was not only good looking, but smart too. Everyone loved surrounding themselves with him. Once this incident took place, most of our friends distanced themselves from him. This incident taught me the cost of risk and how fake people can be. Lesson learned. People love throwing the lifeboat, but no one is willing to jump in the water to save you. And that, people, is why it is important to form genuine and sincere connections through truth, honesty, confrontation, even when necessary, to be like, you know what, I don't agree with you, but at the end of the day, they're your friend and you love them, and that is all that matters. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.